Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. This is Kenton Hornbeck. Pay no attention to the lizard noise I just made. Anyway, I'm joined alongside Logan Decker as usual for a fun episode today. Logan, what are you doing?
Well, besides still trying to wake up, we are potting at almost 8:50 in the morning, which is not usual for us. We're usually in the afternoon or the evening, so still waking up. And I'm trying to figure out if that was a lizard noise or a bird noise. You caught me off guard with that, but I enjoyed it. So.
That was my alarm clock finally going off. The internal clock finally just went off. So
that's when you're ready for the day, when you start making some animal noises.
Every day I rise like
the Undertaker.
Yeah. And then I'm ready to go to the content factory, the content mines.
Man, I'm glad you got that switch like that. Nobody wants to hear that, though. So the first topic we wanted to do was something that I've been paying attention to just because I am a University of Cincinnati alum, and I'm sure many other people, including yourself, have at least heard wind of it or been diving into it like I have. And it is a recent quarterback prodigy of ours who just transferred to Texas Tech, who is now ineligible or has decided to step away from Texas Tech, and that's Brendan Sorsby. Why would he step away from this? Well, to give a little bit of a background, in terms of his career with Cincinnati, at least in last season, he's second team All-Big 12 selection. He threw for 2,800 yards, 27 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He ran for 580 yards and 9 rushing touchdowns. You can make the argument he's probably been the most electric quarterback we've had since probably the Tony Pike era, and he's just a different type of quarterback.
Whoa, Ritter erasure. Desmond Ritter erasure.
Sorsby, listen. It's a fair argument, but I don't know, man. Sorsby just kind of, it felt like he was doing more with less weapons versus Ritter, if I should say. That was probably the best roster that Cincinnati's had. So, I listen, this is not me trying to put down Ritter, all right? I'll be honest there. You know, might have forgotten about him like many other people. But, yes, Ritter took on a magical run. I just think Sorsby could have been a what could have been scenario. Anyway, besides throwing me under the bus there, let's keep going. Basically, there were talks coming into this most recent draft that he might have came out and was expected, and they were thinking found a older CBS mock draft where they had him projected to go number 8 overall in that draft. So they were talking about a first, second round pick for this quarterback. So he decides to transfer to Texas Tech, a Big 12, you could make rival, even though Cincinnati doesn't really have any rivals in that conference, maybe besides West Virginia at this point. But anyway, he makes this deal because he has a NIL contract with them for $6 million. I don't blame him for making the jump there. So this kind of all started just out of the blue. So in late April, 27th actually, he came out and he says he's announcing a leave because of a gambling addiction, and that the NCAA is beginning an investigation of these allegations, basically impermissible betting. And this included thousands of online wagers. At the end of the day, it was a total of over $90,000, which, I mean, for me and you is wildly insane. Maybe for some other people, that's just a bad day at the casino. But that is a lot. But anyway, it kind of goes quiet. A couple weeks later, May 18th, he files a lawsuit against the NCAA, and he's seeking an injunction to basically restore his eligibility for this season. Texas Tech, at the same time, they declare him ineligible, but they pledge to reinstate him. So Texas Tech is kind of following the corpse of NCAA on these rules, but they're setting the ground up to fight. A week later, on the 26th, the NCAA, they deny the reinstatement request, and they leave him ineligible for the season. With his legal case, it proceeds. Well, basically, some of this betting had started out. He started his career with Indiana, the Hoosiers, and then he made his way to Cincinnati, and then up until now, he had goals to play with Texas Tech. But it starts back Indiana. He had made at least 40 bets while he was a freshman in the school in 22, and, of course, one of the big, I guess, they don't want athletes betting within their own sport, which is somewhat fair, but you can't be placing bets on your own team. That's where kind of this big line has been drawn. And there's been several, almost, at least in Indiana, that's been confirmed. Most of those bets were on the Hoosiers, related to the Hoosiers. Basically, though, what's interesting is the NCAA had received a tip from a major gambling book, online site back on March 11th. So they were aware of this, and it makes me think that basically, Texas Tech was notifying this on April 14th. Now, when I bring up the date and I said April 27th is when Sorsby said he's taking a leave of absence, it was in direct response to knowing that he was being investigated. This was not preemptive. This was reactive, which is not something that has been discussed a lot, because I have seen a lot of Sorsby somewhat defenders in the media just because, oh, he's a kid, da-da-da. I'm like, he's making business decisions on this reaction here. What's interesting about this, though, it's like, all right, that sounds pretty typical. They're launching this. Well, on June 8th, a Lubbock County District Court judge, which is in Texas, 300 miles away from Texas A&M Stadium, decides to, hey, he is eligible to play in 2026 unless the NCAA appeals, basically trying to make this a legal process. And basically this ruling was that the NCAA could not prevent Sorsby from practicing or playing at Texas Tech, and Sorsby would agree to basically a suspension for the first 2 games. And this was, of course, proposed by his attorneys. Now, basically, a more descriptive reasoning was that the NCAA's job is, this is from the judge's perspective, is that it's their job to basically assist Sorsby with a medical/mental addiction, not keep him away from the field from this. So he's kind of doing the root reversal where the NCAA failed in their job to do so, which is an interesting argument. But if you don't know, the NCAA has literally no power right now, and that's why we talked about a few episodes ago with Trump passing a collegiate law act, basically trying to provide a better jurisdiction on rules and transfers and money in the college world. Because right now it's the Wild West. Once you start getting states involved, and this is where, let's just say, LSU and their coaching search and all that, when we talked about that months ago as well, it got really ugly because you had the governor of LSU, governor of LSU, governor of Louisiana jumping in on this search, and basically because, hey, the state is tied to paying this public figure to be their coach, it's a problem. Anyway, back to what's going on. So they push this. He gets the random lawyer, this random judge, to join in and basically file an injunction. Well, a week later, June 15th, the Big 12 also files in federal court a declaratory and injunctive relief to punish Sorsby under its bylaws. Basically, with this, the attorneys withdraw from Sorsby's camp. They withdraw their lawsuit. So they basically gave up on the supplemental draft. And big part of this is that the reason why this worked is that the Big Ten, they decided to basically say, hey, if this goes through, we are going to have a scheduling ban. You will not play any team in the Big 12. And there were other athletic directors in other conferences, namely Nebraska and Georgia. They had came out publicly and said, we will not schedule any games with the Red Raiders. So it sounds like because you had your own conference and some of these other major teams saying, hey, we want nothing a part of this. We want nothing a part of you. What you did is what we think is scummy, that Texas Tech basically had backed down. They wanted to support their quarterback because, A, they paid him $6 million, and B, this could potentially, Sorsby had the potential to be Texas Tech made it to the playoffs last year. Maybe Sorsby was the last piece for getting them to the championship or winning it all. But because of all this pressure, they decided to back down. So at this point, Sorsby has already came out and said that he is basically applying for the supplemental draft, which is something very unique in the NFL. Basically, the deadline to apply was June 22nd. He's already done that earlier this week. He plans to have a pro day on July 10th, which is, I think, kind of just it's a run-of-the-mill because the fact that there were potential, you saw mock drafts coming into this recent draft that was talking about Sorsby. There's so many NFL scouts that have done homework on him. I think it's just kind of going through the motions in this. He'll have private workouts around that same timeline. And then in late July, that's when, if the NFL approves of this supplemental draft, Sorsby is expected to be cleared of this and join the league. Now, an interesting bypart of this is that the college football is significantly different nowadays. Now, kind of doing research for this case, I was kind of looking at what are some other reasons that maybe some other players enter the supplemental draft. It could be drug problems. They get caught on a piss test. It could be academic reasons. It could be basically taking money when you're not supposed to. And I'd say the most recent ones is Josh Gordon with basically his love of the green ganja, and Terrell Pryor, who basically took an exchange. He had gave signatures, autographs, away to get free tattoos. And what's interesting, and I bring up the Terrell Pryor thing, is because he got a 5-game suspension for the NCAA, and he just decided, I'm going to the supplemental draft. It goes to the NFL, and the NFL's like, we're going to give you a 5-game suspension. It doesn't matter. You're not getting out of that because we think it violates code of conduct, and you're not going to get out of this. So it's kind of curious to see if the NFL does allow the supplemental draft to happen, are they going to have some type of ruling of their own coming in? Because, hey, we've had some other players in the league already get caught gambling, and they've been punished for it. But it didn't happen while you're in the league. So I'm very curious to see how the NFL handles this. Before I go into what the supplemental draft is and the kind of the details, because it is unique, and we don't get to see it very often, that I had to relook up the rules and say, okay, how does this work again? I wanted to let you kind of in the door here, and what's your take on the Brendan Sorsby story, his interactions with the NCAA, kind of the legal actions taken, and his choice to go to the NFL and hopefully be in the supplemental draft.
I don't really feel bad for Texas Tech in this situation. I mean, it's unfortunate that they're missing out on their, let's say, star quarterback when they were so close last year. To me, it's not that they would know this, but you said, I believe, that the NCAA was alerted of this back in March. So I don't know how Texas Tech could have known, but I'm fairly certain they had intel on this situation and chose to pursue it anyway. If that's untrue, then what I just said was false. But to me, with the amount of resources Tech puts towards college football, puts toward the coaching staff, the players, whatever, with Cody Campbell and all these other donors, there's no way they didn't have some sort of intel on this guy's gambling problem. If he's gambling $90,000 of his NIL money or his own money or whatever, and also in the New York Post, I read that he placed over 9,000 bets, 40 with Indiana, but over 9,000 bets, means the majority of those were when he was the quarterback at the University of Cincinnati. If you're placing 9,000 bets, that's insane, man. Like, that is a severe, severe, severe problem. I mean, imagine smoking 9,000 cigarettes or drinking 9,000 glasses of whiskey or whatever. So that constitutes a problem with the amount of resources that Tech has. I just don't see how I can let them skate by in this situation. They were either trying to we didn't know, or, now we're all screwed. And, you pursue a different player if that's the case. I mean, this was going to come out regardless, it seems like. So did they know? Did they not? We'll never know. The second thing about Sorsby, I'm of two minds. One, I think that it's unfortunate, not to use that word again, but it is unfortunate that he's a younger guy, got caught up in something that is very, very, very accessible to the general public. I'm sure we all have betting apps on our phones. It's easier to bet than it is to almost buy like a Gatorade at the gas station because it's more convenient to bet than get out of your car and go buy a Gatorade. So in that instance, and the other thing is, I'm sure he's got friends that do this all the time. He wasn't in a fraternity, but maybe, he's a popular guy on campus. He's the quarterback. I'm sure there's plenty of people around him betting. I'm sure there's people asking him about bets in his social circle. So that's something that people need to keep an eye on as well. Again, pure speculation, but with this situation, I feel like I'm fairly confident in predicting that was going on behind the scenes. He is a player that I think is pretty good, but not great. The first year at Cincinnati, I was never super impressed. I was happy to be proven wrong this following year. People were telling me he was good. I really wasn't going to admit that to myself. And then last year, he played pretty well. So now he's in a good position to get drafted. He didn't come out this year because he wanted to maximize his draft value for the following year, but also make as much NIL money as he could. I'm fairly certain he would have been in the Heisman Trophy race if he was healthy and able to play for Texas Tech. These are all considerations I'm sure him and his team thought about before the season. But again, I feel like his team probably knew about it as well. There is an epidemic going on about sports gambling in this country. You could talk about how young men are sports gambling all the time. It's not really my thing. I don't really do it. I probably placed less than 20 bets my entire life, and I don't think I've ever placed a bet more than $20. And that's been since it's been legal in Kentucky, so quite a few years. I don't do it really that often. I believe that betting should be legal to an extent. I have there's nuance to it. So to me, you should be able to just, the Super Bowl's on, let's put a bet on it, like you and your buddies, or let's do this. Like, I don't think that should be illegal at all. But betting 9,000 times and you're doing all these like little live bet, whatever, I don't know, man. Just like trade stocks, do something else. Like, it's just getting to a point, and especially where it's crossing over into the sports, to bring it back around to Sorsby, where this is a real problem. This can actually impact play on the field. This can impact outcomes of games. I don't think people quite understand. They think, he's just betting on the side. What's the big deal with this? I understand betting on your team, but even betting on the game of football like that, I mean, people don't understand. I'll take it from like a journalist perspective, not a sports journalist, but you could, like, if I was betting on Polymarket and I had access to a certain campaign in politics, I could bet on all of this information, insider information. Even if the campaign didn't funnel me information directly, I could talk to people around or whatever. You could do all of this stuff. So in football, you got to imagine, even if they're not on the same team, maybe they heard something from somebody else who's their buddy who they used to play with at a different college. This guy's injured. This key guy is in trouble with the coach. He's not going to play. That all impacts the game. It's all information that maybe the markets have not absorbed yet. And you can find some real, gold nuggets, some real value in that. You're essentially cheating the system. You think, well, that's savvy, that's fine. But when you're a quarterback of a team in the Big 12 who's got a pretty decent schedule like Sorsby, you're starting to get a higher profile, you need to take a step back. So I don't really feel bad for him in that instance because yes, guys that are like 22, 23 definitely make mistakes. I'm not going to throw him under the bus for that, but he needs to have accountability in this situation, not just going to the, gambling rehab. He also probably needs to be suspended by the NFL. I don't think he needs to be playing college football anymore. He should not play for Texas Tech next year, certainly, and I believe they dropped the eligibility requirement for him, so the supplemental draft seems to be the way he's going to go. That's fine. We know the kind of guys that have been in the supplemental draft. Now his name is attached to those names. Josh Gordon, to name one, that was a big supplemental draft pick. Terrell Pryor, Isaiah Battle, Jalen Thompson. All these guys have kind of a scarlet letter by their name. They all didn't work out. I don't know if Sorsby is going to be one of those kind of players, but who's to say he'll be good in the NFL? He wasn't a first-round draft pick this year, in my opinion. So it all is out there for, somebody to, react to. I just think in this moment in time, he needs to take a step back. He needs to face the music, and it'll be better for him going forward if he nips this in the bud now. But I can tell you probably the NFL is on high alert. They gave Calvin Ridley a year for doing the same thing. People memed him, clowned him all the time. He doesn't have as much impact on a game as a quarterback. And the last thing, I'll kind of rounding it out, what is it about Cincinnati, Ohio, and people betting on their own teams? I mean, there's definitely a betting culture here. I can tell you, people go to the casino. People like to sports bet here. It is what it is. Pete Rose famously bet on the Cincinnati Reds, got banned for life from baseball, was never able to really have a career after the game of baseball because he was exiled and blackballed. It, sent him down a pretty dark path, even though Pete Rose wasn't the greatest guy in the world. He's got a lot of problems. Brendan Sorsby finally revitalizes the UC football fan base after some years of toiling in mediocrity with Scott Satterfield. They were pretty good with Luke Fickell, and they were on the top of the world. They were able to build a really large, brand new, expensive practice facility on campus next to Nippert. They moved to the Big 12, and now we find the program to be in this mess where their star quarterback, the guy who was the face of the team, was doing, he was just betting on his own team, and you can't do that. It's a bad look. It's a bad look for the university, and they'll dig themselves out of this hole somehow. I don't know about next year, but Scott Satterfield, all these guys, they need to be looked at. Joe Paterno, not to make it too dark, but Joe Paterno got in trouble for covering up or knowing about and not talking about Jerry Sandusky's sex crimes. This is not on the same level. But to me, if Joe Paterno knows about that kind of thing, it's a hard thing to hide. When your quarterback, somebody you're talking to every day in practice, whatever, is at this scale of gambling addiction, you have to know. You're covering it up. You know about it. Honestly, I think it would be better off if Satterfield was not the coach at UC anymore. I think they could have a better coach. He holds programs back. Shout out to all my Louisville fans who know what I'm talking about. That's kind of my thoughts on it. The last quick thing I'll say is I don't think I said this a little bit before, I don't think he's a first-round quarterback this year, even if he came out authentically. Next year, he could have been a first-round pick if he would have increased his production. Texas Tech would have provided it to that, provided him a chance to do that. I don't know what's a good situation for him in the NFL, especially if he's suspended by the league coming into it. So, to me, it's a complete shot in the dark, but he's got a scarlet letter. I don't think the teammates will care. I don't think the coaching staff may even care that much, but the front office and the NFL league office is certainly going to care, and those are not people that you want staring at you all season.
No, I think you summarized the reaction correct. First off, the 90,000 bets is insane. And I've read reports, this was early reports when this came out, this wasn't just all football. Obviously, 90,000 bets is a lot, but it'd be like, oh, here's racquetball and here's female lacrosse. Like, this dude was, like, betting on everything.
This guy was a meme.
Possible.
This is like the degenerate sports gambler meme.
Yeah, this is uncut gems. Like, he was going all in, using all that NIL money just to, hey, try to get some more, I guess. That's the point, or just the thrill of it. But no, like I said, he was projected in one mock draft. Do I think he is, or let's say, is he ready to be a first-round quarterback as of right now? No. There's a reason. Hey, money for sure with Texas Tech, but he made the decision not to come out because he thinks he can get a higher landing spot with this year's draft. Hey, better team, better weapons. He can be a little bit, cement his skills a little bit more, because I would say right now he's kind of a more on the raw talent side versus a more finished product. So I think, yes, the $6 million is a good reason to transfer. I don't blame you for getting the bag, but I also think he needed another year to cook in it. So I 100% agree with you there. I don't think he would have been a first-round pick coming out. What is interesting, though, and you kind of jumped on my next point, is that there was a report, and you probably saw this earlier this week, that there was an accusation against the University of Cincinnati that they were fully aware of Sorsby's betting. And it, like you said, how are you not aware of this when he's been at your university for 2 years under the same coach? I'm like, I guarantee you that they knew about this. Now, obviously, does that change anything for Sorsby himself? No. But is the University of Cincinnati going to be investigated? Absolutely. And guess who's going to take the brunt of that? Satterfield is. I'm in the same boat. If Satterfield was replaced with somebody else, I would not be upset. I've been around Satterfield personally, and let's just say, because, hey, I grew up rooting for the Louisville Cardinals, and I went to the University of Cincinnati, and I was in close proximity to him where I was basically doing some work for them, and it was interesting, let's just say that. But I've never been a big fan. Not for a personal reason, more of a football outlet reason. Getting beyond this, let's talk about the supplemental draft itself, because it is unique. It is, I would say, considerably different than the typical NFL draft. And at least growing up, I remember when Josh Gordon was in the supplemental draft. Man, that makes me sound young, but I wasn't really that young when it happened. But it just popped up, and oh yeah, the supplemental draft was today. Oh, the Browns took Josh Gordon. Okay, cool. But here's what actually happens. So basically, teams are divided into 3 tiers. Teams that have 6 or fewer wins in the prior season are in one tier. Non-playoff teams with 7+ wins are in another tier. And then you have all the playoff teams in a third tier. So basically, this determines, hey, you got your 3 groups there. And then within each tier, the NFL conducts a weighted lottery to determine the exact order. So the team that had the number 1 pick is not guaranteed to have the number 1 pick in the draft. I don't know how they do the weighted, what's the percentages. I could not find that. Something tells me that's just within the books of the NFL. I'm sure it's out there somewhere. And it was just not something that I could easily find in 5 minutes. But basically, the draft is it's 7 round long in total. Before each round starts, the teams get to bid a future pick. So let's just say, let's just say, I'm just picking a team. Let's just say the Rams. This is obviously the Rams would not do that. They just drafted a quarterback. But if we'll spend a first-round pick on it. And then the Browns were like, we'll spend a second-round pick on them. Obviously, the NFL is going to take the highest pick in this situation. But basically, the organizations all submit their bids, and they do it via email. So it's not like they're all in a room. They're not like on a phone call or anything like that. But basically, if you want them, send the email and determine on if you're the highest, or I should say the lowest number in your tier, you win that as long as somebody doesn't beat you on that. However, let's just say I keep picking the Rams because they're never going to do it in this scenario, but if they were to spend a first-round pick to get Brendan Sorsby, they don't get the first-round pick in the 27 draft. They lose it. It's basically the exchange. You're giving up a pick for next year's draft to pick a guy in the supplemental draft. So I do think that he's not going to be a first-round pick in the supplemental draft. I could see a second. I could see a third. I'd be shocked if he went further. If he went further, I wouldn't question it because of talent. I would question it because, this gambling situation is worse than we think. The NFL's probably going to act on this kind of deal. And they know about it and we don't. But basically, the history of the supplemental draft here It's only 46 players have ever been taking the supplemental draft. There's been plenty of players that have applied but may have not gotten drafted, or they just were not given access to it. It started in 1977. I've already mentioned some of the various circumstances why some people could lose their eligibility. Another popular one is, and this doesn't happen anymore, but in the 70s and the 80s, some players would forget to basically declare for the draft by the timeline that they had to, and they were like, oh, I forgot. And they're like, NFL's like, oh, that's fine. We'll get you in here. Don't worry about it. There's only one player in the supplemental draft who has entered the Football Hall of Fame, and that's Chris Carter. That was in 1987. Went to the Hall of Fame in 2013. 8 players in total have been to Pro Bowls. Bernie Kosar, Chris Carter, Bobby Humphrey, Rob Moore, Mike Wale, Jamal Williams, Ahmad Brooks, Josh Gordon. The most recent one was in 2019. Should have had it on here, but he's a safety for the Arizona Cardinals. And I believe you might have mentioned him. But he's been a very solid player for. I think they've said since 2019 he's played in 98 games, so he's been a starter for them essentially. I believe he was a 5th-round supplemental pick. So these guys can obviously work out and be a big part of your team here. And some of the other guys, it's like, oh, well, if there's only 8 players that have been to Pro Bowls, I'm like, some of these other guys were pretty notable names that I went through the list. I was like, oh, I didn't know he's a supplemental pick. It's like we had one class had 3 quarterbacks come out, and they were first, second, and second-round picks for them. So there's definitely some talent coming out. The only problem is that half of the reasons why people would want to, or players would want to go in the supplemental draft is no longer an issue in today's football world. Basically, hey, drugs is a big one. NFL doesn't even test for marijuana anymore. College, to my knowledge, they don't test for marijuana anymore. And then in terms of money, that's the other reason. Oh, now college players get paid. They get NIL. They make money from all different kinds of places. So you've eliminated at least most of the modern sources for this. So that's when I say, hey, even though it's happened, since 1977, this is probably going to be this is going to be a storyline reason almost every time it happens now, because it's going to be a big name player that does something in college that's in this scale where it's either very frowned upon or just egregious beyond all means, in terms of law or just despicable act or whatever. So it'll be something to pay attention to. The step in the process that we're at is waiting for the NFL to approve of a supplemental draft. I have a good feeling it'll happen. They're probably just trying to figure out if there is a punishment, what will it be? That's probably where they are stuck at right now with this. What are your thoughts about the supplemental draft? Because I'm sure we're in the same boat. We haven't seen a whole lot of it in our lifetimes. I think the biggest players that we've seen for us is probably Terrell Pryor and Josh Gordon. And then at that time we were, a freshman. We were in middle school when this was all going on, so it's not like we were diving into it. But what do you think about the supplemental draft process? Me diving in, I'm like, this is actually a pretty interesting concept.
I think it's interesting. That's accurate. For me, the players coming out while we were growing up, you mentioned Josh Gordon and Terrell Pryor, 2 very, very famous football players for separate reasons, each running into trouble with the NCAA and their own universities. Josh Gordon for marijuana abuse, and that continued, and other drug abuse, to be fair. That continued throughout his NFL career after a very brief flash of brilliance. Terrell Pryor did play decently in the NFL as a quarterback for the Raiders in a few games, but never really cut it at that position. Switched to wide receiver, played for, I believe, the Redskins and the he was a wide receiver, Texans, I believe. I can't quite remember.
I thought he played. Did he play for the Raiders too at one point?
He did play for the Raiders, but I always think of him as a quarterback for them. But regardless, very good quarterback at Ohio State. That's where he's most well known. Got in trouble for selling autographs. Got Ohio State actually suspended for a year from bowl contention back in I believe it was like 2012, they didn't have any postseason eligibility, and then they went out and went undefeated, I think, one of those years without having a postseason challenge. So, interesting. Good players, but each with problems off the field. Sorsby now throws his name into a list with guys like that. So, there is also Chris Carter, you mentioned him. There is a blueprint for guys to do good. What I can't help but notice, though, Logan, is when I go back and look through the supplemental draft picks, at least the most recent ones, there's no quarterbacks. This is a position that is generally not taken in the supplemental draft. The quarterback position also has characteristics that you would hope a player at that position would not share some of the other characteristics associated with other players drafted in the supplemental draft. You want leadership, you want tenacity, you want patience, you want accuracy, all of these things. Sorsby, it's not that he doesn't have those, but now, I mean, how's a guy in a locker room? And I don't think the players will really care that much, truly. But it's just a little different. Like a coaching staff trusting you to run the offense or learn or whatever, and this is kind of like lingering over you. I fear he could have just thrown away his whole career by doing this. That is the issue here. It's not that he couldn't be in the NFL and he couldn't be good. I mean, but he's put himself in such a situation that he'll be working his whole career to get this stink off of him, essentially. He's putting himself in a poor position. The NFL suspending him would not be good for his development as a young player. He needs it to. Like you mentioned, he is a prospect that is a mold of clay. He needs to be, he's clay. He needs to be molded. And this will infringe upon his development as a player, as a quarterback, when you need the most development. I think if I was a team in the NFL, I wouldn't spend more than a third-round pick on him, to be completely fair. The second-round pick would be pushing it. That would be really aggressive for a player like him. I think he's pretty good. He could be better in the future, but third round feels safe to me, and I think ultimately that's where he'll go. We saw one quarterback on the supplemental draft list, and we saw what happened to him throughout his career. So, to me, he's just got to keep chugging forward. He's got to keep moving. The supplemental draft, as far as a institution, is interesting. I'm glad it exists for the NFL. It's good that they actually have a system to integrate these guys into a roster. Now they just have to prove it. I think he is in a situation where he'll be better suited to succeed from the supplemental draft, but make no mistake about it. I don't think he's going to be any Hall of Famer. I don't think he's going to be any type of player like that. I think he'll be a lower level starter if he does start, one-time Pro Bowler on the high end, but he's really going to have to dig himself out of this hole.
Yeah, I wish him the best of luck, but he's got a long way ahead of him. All right, so our next topic today is, hey, we finally got to mess around with some of the technology in the pod, only like 23 episodes later, but we got it for you. So we decided in the off season we're going to play around with some different topics, have a little bit more fun, whether it's trivia, tier list, whatever it might be, different subjects in total. So I figured today we would start off with a tier list, not on any particular ranking in terms of a skill of a quarterback or a favorite wide receiver or anything like that, but we're going to be talking about the stadiums in the NFL. I imagine part of the criteria is probably historical relevance, as well as just how new it is, how nice it is, what we've seen on TV, and we've been to some of these stadiums, so we figured we would share some insight on that. So when I hit the magic button, ta-da! I need an ad blocker, so don't focus too much on the giant wraps from Zaxby's or the
rules, though.
Spanish furniture ad at the bottom. But ignore that. the topics are right there in the front. So we figured we'd go in alphabetical order. So we're going to start top left with the Arizona Cardinals there. Just right out of the gate, there's a reason why Arizona has hosted, I believe, 3 or 4 Super Bowls. It's in that number range. And the NFL is not going to send a Super Bowl to a bad stadium or a bad city. Speaking in general, though, Arizona Stadium, at least from what we've seen on TV on the outside, it doesn't necessarily stand out. It's not like a SoFi. It's not a Lucas Oil Field or something like that. But it has to have some nice amenities and plenty of room, and just with it being in Arizona, it's good temperature as well. Obviously, that's not going to affect the game as much, but it makes sense why it is a Super Bowl site, a very common one. If I had to put a letter on it, for all those reasons, I'm going to probably put it in the A category. What's your thoughts and opinions on this? State Farm Stadium, by the way.
I'm oscillating between A and B, leaning more toward the A for the simple fact that, like you said, Arizona has hosted a number of Super Bowls. It's a marquee site in the NFL for big games. It's also the host of the Fiesta Bowl, I believe, in college football, which is a massive bowl in its own right. I got to go A here. It's not the most memorable stadium outside of having these big games. So there's some aesthetic things. There's some Cardinals-specific things that probably prevent the stadium from being a little higher on this list. But an A tier, I think, is pretty safe. It's decent, but not the best. The other thing I want to point out about this stadium, which I always think is pretty cool, and it seemed to be they were the first ones to do it, was because they're in Arizona, they would have the grass outside of the field, and they have it on like a track where when they're going to go play a game, it goes into the stadium, like underneath like a little like slit or wall or whatever, and they set it up, and then when they're not playing anymore, they put it on the track and they roll it back out, and it's outside the stadium in the sunlight. They're able to take care of it out there. I think that's really neat, but A tier is probably the best for State Farm Stadium.
And of course, when we get into it, just like any other tier list, if you see something that's on the far left of a tier, that's going to be a higher ranking for us. So you'll see a number order basically by the end of it. Next, we have Mercedes-Benz Stadium with the Atlanta Falcons. I don't think there's an argument on this one. I believe we're both going to put this in the S tier. I personally never been, just like I've never been to Arizona Stadium, never been to Mercedes-Benz. I've been around it plenty of times. I've just never stepped inside. But just, for whatever reason, if you're watching a Falcons game, I'm sorry, but the stadium is immaculate. The overhead shot, just, the fact that, hey, it's one of the World Cup hosting sites right now. I believe it's hosted also a Super Bowl already. This is where another bowl game is played. This, oftentimes in the beginning of the year, hey, when Georgia's playing on a neutral site, the Bulldogs, they're going to be playing at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in a early couple weeks matchup, a high-tier matchup. So for me, it's undoubtedly an S tier. Hey, they're the only stadium that I believe has a Chick-fil-A, which still does not open on Sundays. So I guess maybe that's an S- if you're really that hardcore about Chick-fil-A. But it's one of the most up-to-date stadiums that you could have in the league. It's beautiful, and hey, the owner, they got a lot of money in the organization. So, hey, you invested it into basically the capital of the South with Atlanta. It's a standout. It definitely in the city of Atlanta, it's a spectacle within itself.
I agree. This is an S-tier stadium. This is a stadium, if you'll recall last week from my rant, guys, this is a stadium that British people think is not as good as Old Trafford or some of these old bum parks that they play at. So this multi-billion-dollar stadium with a metal butthole roof is apparently not the greatest in the world. I say that's totally incorrect. This is arguably one of the 3 to 5 greatest stadiums in the entire world. Certainly by technological success, certainly by fan experience, certainly by uniqueness. Also, they have the concessions, which are cheap. Arthur Blank, the owner of the Falcons, famously wanted people to have cheaper concessions at Falcons games. Hopefully that can spread out throughout the rest of the NFL. But I think this is a no-brainer. For me, it's like this, SoFi, and Jerry World as the top stadiums in the NFL. But I think S is a no-brainer. Also, host of the Peach Bowl and a very, very famous site in college football already. So I guess if you are a college football fan, you can have that Chick-fil-A because your teams play on Saturday.
The next one that we have is M&T Bank Stadium with the Baltimore Ravens. This is not one that I've even seen in person. I've only seen it on TV. I have heard some pretty wonderful things about it, though. Basically, great lines of sight. It's perfect for home fans. Of course, you want to have that type of advantage, but great views all around. It's very up to date with different technological scoreboards and just different things around. There's apparently a really good outdoor kind of area surrounding the stadium, so it is kind of a, hey, tailgating, you're going to see that at every stadium, but basically they built this concept originally with this in mind. I've heard that, hey, you mentioned concessions, that apparently they have a thing called fan first pricing over there. So it is pretty, and they basically have a lot of regional favorites. So, hey, if you know Baltimore, they got a lot of really good seafood. So they definitely dive into the culture with the food over there. I'd say M&T Bank Stadium is probably a bright spot for the city of Baltimore. I'm not going to talk trash about an entire city, but, hey, it seems like you all have a wonderful stadium. Yeah, I'm kind of levitating between the A and the B here. I can't sit here and say, like, hey, is it better than the Cardinal Stadium? I would say Baltimore is in the region where it's like, hey, you could have the opportunity to host Super Bowls. I think your city plays a bigger aspect of that, why maybe you don't get the opportunity to do that more. So, let's just say in fairness here, I'm going to put this, and myself, I would put this in the A category, but I'm going to put it behind the Arizona Cardinals.
I'm actually leaning toward B here. I think all of the things you laid out are very relevant and true. I would add it's getting older, and we're not going to judge all of these stadiums on the age. Obviously, I don't want to count a stadium that was built in the late '90s or early 2000s. I don't want to hold that against the stadium as a whole, just because the architect and the style of the time was a little different. But to me, this is B, simply for the fact that while it is a good stadium, it's not very memorable. I can't really recall too many people talking about, like, this is one of my favorite stadiums. I think if you looked up a bunch of lists, it would be toward the middle part of the pack. And so I don't want to dilute the A tier, but I do think this is a good stadium. It's very solid. But for me, it's not very memorable besides the product on the field. I mean, you come to see the Ravens, and the fans are really good, but the aesthetics are solid. The purple seating is cool. It's solid. I think this is a solid stadium, solidly B tier.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I'm happy to leave it in the B tier. We might have some Ravens fans that we know might say something about it, but I don't even think they've been.
And really quick, before, I guess we should lay this out, before this is kind of a unique case, before we talk about Buffalo, are we discussing Highmark Stadium, the old one, or are we discussing Highmark Stadium like the new, it's going to open, or the old one?
You beat me to the punch here, because when I saw the Bills were up next, I was going to bring this up. I'm going to say we're going to base this on the stadium that's had people in it. So we're going to do this on the old Highmark Stadium. So because of this, and I think this is fair, hey, there's a reason why the new stadium was being built. It is a very old stadium. It was originally built in 1973. So we said, hey, we're not trying to knock you on having an old stadium, but when it's 1973 and there's not constant updates, like let's just say some other organizations like Green Bay and Lambeau Field, but it's one of those things where I think it was very representative of the Buffalo community. It's definitely not, the old stadium is not by basically a luxury compared to so many of these other stadiums, but this is the People's Stadium. This is a great representation of the Bills Stadium, but it's definitely out of date. And if I nominate something to be an F tier, the fact that they're building a new stadium and they will be playing in it very soon, I think that is somewhat good reasoning for it. But it needed the update, and I'm not trashing the stadium if I put it in the F tier. It's just in comparison with the other ones. So for me, just because, hey, out with the old, in with the new. Not that I've heard it was a bad stadium, but I know some Bills fans who were from the Buffalo area, and whenever they talked about the game day experience, it was never about the stadium itself. It was always the atmosphere. It was always the game on the field. I never heard anybody brag or talk about their stadium. They're very excited for the new one, but in terms of the old Highmark Stadium, I'm going to have to put this in F tier.
I'm right there with you. This is a bottom tier F stadium. It's not Bills fans' fault, but the stadium is out of date, like you mentioned. It's been the site of many a memory for Bills fans. The reason they probably tailgate so hard is because it's a very dated stadium in the middle of a surface parking lot, and there's not much to do inside besides watch the game. So outside, you could have this community gathering where everybody comes together and gets hammered and jumps through flaming tables and eats hot wings, and we got to make it up there sometime, actually. That would be a really cool football pilgrimage. But as far as the stadium, formerly known as Ralph Wilson Stadium, while it is the site of many great Bills football memories, it's not the best or even close to the best in the NFL. I think it's an F tier. Like you mentioned, the reason they built a new stadium is because they were at a point in time, the organization was, where Ralph Wilson, Highmark, whatever, was not doing it for them. So I'm excited also for Bills fans and the organization for the new stadium. I hope they don't price out people. That would really bum me out. But the old stadium, it's getting sent off. A little paper boat in the water. It's going to float out to sea. It did its job probably longer than it needed to, but this is an F.
The next one we got on our list is the Carolina Panthers. I've been to this stadium. I've been to the Bank of America Stadium, and they are currently, and I was there during some of this, but basically over the next 3 years, they're in mid-process of doing a massive renovation, $800 million renovation over this time period. And there has been some historical context. The stadium was built in 1996. They've even had some players on their own team call this one of the worst stadiums in the NFL, and this was back in 24. However, when I went, and I went last year for a preseason game, and let's just say I have to compare it to the hometown with Paycor Stadium with the Cincinnati Bengals. And I thought basically the Bank of America Stadium was hands down better than the Bengals Stadium. It was a better experience. It had let's say the surrounding area into the stadium was it was phenomenal. They leaned into their organization like you see Philadelphia, and there's a statue of Nick Foles. I'm like, Carolina has all of that stuff going around. It's a very nice walk to get into the stadium. When you're walking in entry level, man, they do a fantastic first impression walking in on the ground level. Of course, the price of your seats and whatnot. But I was like, man, I've been to several collegiate stadiums, I've been to several NFL stadiums, but I was thoroughly impressed with the presentation within, like the bars that they had, the different, little restaurants in there, the shops. I'm like, this is an organization in terms of the renovations, they're doing something right. I thought hands down, I'm like, if you had to ask what is a better experience, let's just in terms of the stadium itself, Bengals or Carolina, it's Carolina hands down in this situation. I'd probably put them maybe relatively in the same tier. I'm going to put Carolina in the C tier, but it's going to be one of the upper C tiers for me. It was a really cool stadium. The view is fantastic. It's very, very open. It's outdoors. as soon as you're driving into Charlotte, especially from the south side, it's the first thing that you see. It stands out. It's a nice stadium. It's got nice areas around it. They've really built a good culture in Charlotte for that. I don't think people realize how dedicated Panthers fans are unless you're in this area that I'm at now. So for me, I'm putting Carolina Panthers in the C tier.
I think C tier is probably the right place for the stadium. I've never been. I've obviously seen the exterior driving by on the highway. One of the things I really enjoy about this stadium in particular is the Charlotte skyline that pops up out of the background. And, of course, for anybody who isn't aware, Charlotte's grown a lot over the past 10, 20 years in terms of their downtown in addition to their metro area. So they've added a lot of skyscrapers and some really interesting architecture, which blends into the stadiumscape behind Bank of America Stadium. One of the reasons people like the Pittsburgh Pirates PNC Park so much is not for the baseball in particular. It's more of the stadium, and part of the thing that's good about the stadium is the Pittsburgh skyline you see in the background. I think this stadium has that, and I really enjoy that aspect of it. The blue seats are very cool. It's a stadium that is, like the Ravens one, a little forgettable. I think unless you're a Panthers fan, you aren't really plugged in on this. If you're more of a national, fan, or maybe a fan of a bigger market team, it is a little older, and I think it's good they're doing the renovations, like you said. One thing I wish NFL teams would do, and maybe we could talk about this in a future episode, is I get building the whole new stadium like what Buffalo is doing, but some of these places don't need to be torn down and built or have some new stadium in the suburbs or whatever. Like, I wish they'd keep investing into making the current space as best as it could, like the best version of itself. That's what I would like for this stadium, and it sounds like that's what Panthers ownership is leaning towards. So again, C tier for me. They also are the home of the Charlotte MLS team, which seems to be pretty popular as well. So it's getting some multi-use out of it.
Yeah, the next one is going to be an interesting conversation. That's Soldier Field with Chicago. So if you're not aware, they may not be in Chicago. It sounds like they're not going to be in Chicago. They're going to be the Indiana Bears. But so Soldier Field, it's the oldest current NFL stadium, built in 1924. It has a lot of historical value here. It's been, despite that, it's been well known that this stadium has needed upgrades for a considerable amount of time. And I think when you got to compare it to a division rival with the Packers, is that the Packers have done a really good job of performing renovations within their stadium, the facilities, and it just from what I've heard and what I've seen, Chicago just is not able to support that as well. And maybe that's the city of Chicago itself. Hey, they're talking about a move. They don't want them to go from Chicago, but where the hell are they going to build it? And part of that is, we don't want to pay for it. You get in that little scrum there. I really, really don't want to put this in F tier. I've never been to Soldier Field. I think if I was in Soldier Field, I'd kind of have this, this, I don't want to say nostalgia, and maybe that's the word for it, but it's like this aura where it's like, oh man, I'm standing at like historic grounds here. So it's really tough for me to sit here and say, like, am I taking too much historical context in there? Because I've never seen it, never drove by it, never been around it, haven't taken a walk around. But at least just in terms of, from what I've read and what I've seen, the facilities and whatnot, this stadium is almost barely holding it together. So it sounds like something needs to be done. This would be in the situation where I would agree with you. This is a renovation job, but they are unable to do it. So I'm going to unfortunately put this in an F tier because I'm doing this based off of the experience, the fans, whatnot, not just the historical context behind the situation. What's your thought process on this?
This is an F for me.
Okay.
I agree with all of the historical context that you've added. Soldier Field is a very important site in American sports history. It's hosted many great events. It's been the home of the Bears for a long time. But at this point in time, it's very dated. In my opinion, the best thing about Soldier Field is its location on the lake, location on Lake Michigan, where you can see the skyline in the background. It looks really cool on TV. The outdoor atmosphere is crazy cool because it gets snowy, it gets cold. The field conditions aren't always the best. I'm not a football player, so I can't really speak about how awesome it is to play in that kind of weather. We've seen famous shots of Justin Fields when he was the Bears quarterback sliding on his belly after scoring a touchdown, and it felt like he went 10 yards because it was so rainy and muddy outside. But regardless, the Bears are a middling franchise, and they have a bad stadium. I think the Bears could be worth a lot more money if they did build a new stadium. This whole saga really bums me out because, to me, I want them to be playing downtown, even if the logistics of it aren't really fleshed out or aren't the best for the fans. Because there's a YouTuber I really like named GFed. He does a lot of stadium tours. He actually went to the Bear Stadium. He lives in Chicago, and he kind of explained to people, he's like, look, the Soldier Field, people think it's right downtown, and it is, but there's a big street, big like roadway that disconnects it from actual downtown. So it's not like you can just leave Soldier Field and walk right across the street and go. Like, you can, but it's going to be kind of a journey because you're going to have to cross traffic a couple times. It's busy traffic. So it's kind of on an island between the lake, the road, and downtown. Even if the views are super cool, I've heard the stadium is pretty small, and it doesn't have great facilities inside. The bathrooms aren't very good. One note I'll say about old stadiums, and this is one of the best stadiums in the United States of America, period, bar none, is Wrigley Field in Chicago. It's amazing. If you're not even a baseball fan, I would recommend you go. It's super, super, super cool. It's super modern. It's super nice, even though it's one of the oldest stadiums in the country. But I bring it up to say, when you walk into Wrigley Field, you instantly know that it was built in like 1912. The roofs in the concourses and the walkways are kind of on top of you. I'm 5'8". They're not very tall. So you could tell it was just made for a different time, a different amount of people at a stadium. Now, it's cool and folksy when you're there, at a game, but as far as an NFL game goes, with the Bears, you want the most seamless fan experience, and it seems like the Bears aren't giving it to the fans, and it's partly because Soldier Field is so out of date. So I'm going to give this an F. The Indiana Bears, unfortunately, won't be playing in their longtime hometown for very much longer.
All right, another interesting one, because I feel like this is I don't want to say a debated topic, but let's just say, what's your grade of shit? And that's the Cincinnati Bengals with Paycor Stadium. Now, I will give credit to the organization. They, in the last 5 years, they have been trying updates, renovations, practice facilities, whatnot. But we've all been to this one. It's by no means, it's a football experience. I would not say, is there anything about Paycor Stadium that really stands out? And I would have to say no. Now, to one point, you just mentioned with the Chicago Bears, I'm like, hey, since Paycor Stadium is really kind of in the heart of downtown, you only got to walk maybe 500 yards, and there's Jefferson Social. There's all these different bars and restaurants right there. And you got the Red Stadium right there. It's all on the same street. It's super, super cool being on that downtown strip there. But don't get me wrong. It's been a few years since I've been to Paycor Stadium. I think the last time I was there was in 22 myself. It is an NFL experience. It is a good environment. It's fun. Tailgating, awesome. But there's nothing that really, really stands out about it. Now, I do like the theme, of course. Welcome to the Jungle. They really play into that. It's really smart. It's really good. fantastic environment. I've already said it, but I just can't think of. It's like, hey, tell me if I'm somebody else is talking about hey, what is Paycor Stadium like? What is there something that really stands out about it? I don't know what to tell you. There's just nothing for me that's like, wow, they have really fantastic facilities. If it's dated, that's what it is. It is a 2000 stadium, and they are slowly trying to bring it up to date. But is it a fine experience? Yes. Is it one of those like, hey, I'm going to go see all 32 stadiums, rank the most important ones I should see first? This does not pop in my mind. So I guess for me, like I said, I think it's worse than the Carolina Stadium. I would have to put maybe Paycor at the top of F tier. What about you?
I will reserve F tier for really, really bad stadiums.
Okay,
and I don't think
that's fair.
This is to the level of the priors. I think it's below Carolina, like you were saying. It's in C tier. I have a couple thoughts on this. One, you're absolutely right that this is a very forgettable stadium. It's not very memorable. It doesn't really do that much well at all. I think when I go to Paycor Stadium and I walk around the inside and walk around the concourses, it is very bland. There's actually less in this in the interior than you might imagine. It's not really themed as much as other stadiums. It's just kind of concrete and glass. It doesn't have as many tributes to the Bengals as I'd like, and it's been a couple of years, probably 2023, I think, is when the last time I went there. But they've updated it some, but not that much, at least for the fans. I think they've been more focused on updating it for the players, which is totally valid. Definitely do that first. But as far as the fan experience goes, yeah, it's pretty bland. You don't have as much, Bengals history or lore or anything like that. It's there, but it's not really heavily integrated. It just kind of feels like a generic football stadium they've kind of went through and like plastered some Bengals stuff on it. Now, I do think this stadium has some good attributes. Its exterior looks really cool. It's one of the most unique looking exteriors in the NFL. It is downtown, so you get the skyline up on the background, which I think is great. The orange seats are always really cool. It's very unique. At this stadium, I can actually see from my house where I live, so that's always – I'm partial to that. I could walk there if I want to. The parking's not that great, parking situation. The Bengals fans do tailgate pretty well. There is good tailgating here. Probably top 5 in the NFL. Obviously, like the Bills are up there, the Chiefs are up there, but I would throw the Bengals up in the top 5 as well. The field itself, I thought, had more aura when it had Kentucky bluegrass instead of turf. I think the turf looks like trash because the Bengals never replace it enough. The bluegrass was much better, in my opinion. This stadium is a little dated at this point in time, but it's not bad. It leaves you wanting more. It's not great, but it's not bad, in my opinion. There's nothing. It's just an experience. It's a time. And as other stadiums upgrade, the difference between this stadium and the other stadiums will become more noticeable because there will be less contemporary late 2000s stadiums to compare it to. What I hope the Bengals do is not waste a bunch of money and move out to Mason, because I think in the interest of Cincinnati as a whole, I love having the stadium downtown. They're going to build that bridge. They're going to cap, hopefully, the Fort Washington Way. They're going to finish the banks. They've committed about $800 million to finishing the banks. The Red Stadium looks pretty good still. They have all of those bars. If they could connect that whole district together, it's going to be one of the best social places in American sports. It just will be. So I hope the Bengals treat Paycor Stadium more so like Lambeau Field. It's not as historic as Lambeau Field at all. I don't mean that, but continually tinker with it, continually add. There's no reason why this stadium can't be unique in its own right. Like I was saying, it has a cool exterior. It has things going for it. they need to do a better job beefing up the inside, making that look less dated, and adding some cool things for the fans. Spend money on what you already have. Don't take out a bunch of loans and move to Mason or Northern Kentucky or whatever. I like coming down the hill and seeing the stadium. This is a lower C tier for me, but again, it's not bad. It's just not very good either. It's a place to watch football, and that's what they paid for initially back in the early 2000s. If you would have asked me before the Titans built their new stadium or about to be built, because I've been in Tennessee Stadium, and I would say they're very similar, with Cincinnati's being better, but now Tennessee is obviously invested into building their new stadium, so the Bengals are slowly but surely becoming the last team with this kind of place to play. The Browns are getting a new place. They're going to have some tough decisions to make. They extended the lease for about 10 years. I say keep investing in downtown, keep investing in this stadium, and you're going to have a really good, unique experience when it's all said and done.
Yeah, some of my potential Bengals hate might have came out in the F tier. I apologize to all the Bengals fans. Paycor isn't that bad. It's just forgettable.
It's just not that good either, though.
So, speaking of the Cleveland Browns, we got Huntington Bank Field next. And at least in terms of rankings and places I've looked up and read and seen with it, it also seems kind of in this mid-lower tier just in general. It's got a really cool backdrop because it's got the lake, one of the Great Lakes, right behind it. So that's a really unique view, Lake Erie. It's kind of a pro and a con because they are not a dome. You can make the argument, you should, embrace that cold weather. I'm like, Lake Erie's a little mean in those winter months. So there's been some good and some bad complaints about that. But, in terms of technology, it's kind of the standard and what they have in scoreboards and just different lightings around the area. It's got a very good open view. I think one of the biggest things that people complain about is there is no, and I haven't heard this, there's no official parking with the Cleveland Browns. So the tailgates are pretty spread out. Now, I'm sure you still find a way to congregate, but it sounds like it can be a little bit of a mess to potentially get to the stadium or have your game day plan for it. But, it's fairly modern. It's, from what I've seen, it's got pretty good concessions, good, you can't really complain too much about the prices for an NFL game. But like you said, they're in the process of trying to get a dome put in. So I think this is not like the desperation move that, let's just say, the Chicago Bears need, or maybe Buffalo needs, or Tennessee needs for that matter, where it's like, hey guys, it's time. Cleveland Stadium was built in 1999, but they've done a pretty good job trying to keep it up to date. I just think they're like, hey, let's just go all in with it. So even though we said, hey, if you're building a new stadium, maybe you should just be in the F tier, I think Cleveland might be this weird exception where it's like, I think you guys could have just kept doing what you were doing and been totally fine. But it sounds like you're just trying to jump up to this next tier because you got Haslam money. That's fine. I get that. So for me, I'm going to put them in C tier. And I'd probably, maybe I'm going to put it between Carolina and Cincinnati.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with the Jimmy Haslam thing. The difference between the Bengals and the Browns is that Jimmy Haslam, who owns the Cleveland Browns, is way, 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 way richer than Mike Brown. So he can afford to bilk the Cleveland taxpayer for more money, or the I don't know where they're moving, Berea, Ohio, but the Browns will move out of Cleveland eventually. Their current stadium is fine, late 90s stadium. It is kind of unique being right on the lake. I like the view right on the lake. It's really bumming me out that both Chicago and Cleveland are going to be moving indoors into the suburbs. And I understand from a pragmatic standpoint, like, I'm not hating on them because of that and not being able to negotiate with the city. There's a lot of nuance to these situations, but as a pure football aesthetic, from a pure football aesthetic standpoint, this is a big loss, having the stadium not on the lake anymore. But I get it. The current stadium is not very great. It's kind of like Paycor. It's forgettable. The fans make it memorable, which is a big compliment to the fan base. Same thing with the Bengals, is that if the fans are the one, and the Bills, if the fans are the ones making it memorable, then you got a fan base that really cares. But this stadium's rapidly becoming out of date, and I think C tier is probably the best place for it. I've never been in it. I've seen it from the outside, so I can't really comment on the game day experience per se. But I think C is probably fair. I'd say lower C.
All right. I think this will be an easy one coming up. We got Jerry World, AT&T Stadium. This is one of those where I said earlier, hey, make that list of stadiums I need to go to. This is on the top of the list just in terms of any sport in America, in my opinion. It's one of those, it's like, hey, they try to get the Cowboys, not just because it's the Cowboys and the fan base, but you want to talk about, like, just the history, but also, like, man, it's just a magnificent stadium. This is Jerry's baby here. He had special construction done with all this. The view from the outside, the inside, it's got retractable roof. It's got this massive scoreboard. At the time, it still might be the largest scoreboard. I think SoFi has it beat now. But at one point, it did have, by far, hands down, the largest scoreboard in America and the largest just board in the whole country. This is one of those that I haven't been there yet, but my wife is a Cowboys fan. Unfortunately, we will make a trip down to Arlington one day to see this magnum opus, our Roman Empire, our Colosseum here. There's nothing else much I can say. It's Jerry World. This is his baby. It's got to be, for me, I'm going to put it ahead of the top of S tier for the moment.
This is a layup. It was way ahead. It's an easy A. It was way ahead of its time when it was built. I mean, this set the blueprint for all modern stadiums to come after it. Atlanta, SoFi, etc. I mean, this is the golden goose of American sporting stadiums. Don't really have much to add. It's just the only ding I could give it is that it's out in the burbs, and it's way away from Dallas, but Dallas isn't one of those cities that you really want to be downtown in. Dallas is kind of got a fractured downtown covered in parking lots. So I give Jerry credit moving out to Arlington and essentially not credit for doing that. Like, I wish it was more close to town, but he's essentially created his own city around the stadium, which is very unique. And I know a lot of teams are starting to do this now. He set the bar for this. So you got to give the man, a lot of people hate him. You got to give him a little credit. There's a reason he is who he is. He's Jerry Jones, and this is Jerry World, and it's top 5 in the world stadiums. I mean, bar none.
Yeah, the next one we got, I think, is not potentially to that level, but it's definitely a historical field. It's always talked about, Mile High and Power Field with the Denver Broncos. Just in terms of the stadium itself, built in 2001, they have definitely done a massive job with making sure, hey, the amenities are there. Hey, it helps when you have the Walton family, even though that's been more recent. That definitely helps. But it's been really praised for having a fan-friendly design just for the stadium, the atmosphere itself. It's one of those, with it being in Denver, but they still did a really good job of making sure, hey, just like Jerry World, he built his own city around it. The city was already there, but Denver has the space to accommodate. So it's also a big place for where a lot of concerts are held over in that part of the U.S. So that tells you it holds many different events. It's it's one of those where I'm not going to put it in the S tier, but I'm going to put it in the A tier. I think for me, man, do I put it ahead of the Arizona Cardinals? I think for the stadium itself, yes, I would. But it's one of those. Also on the list, I say, hey, go check it out. Maybe it's not number 1 or number 2, but it should be on your short list of stadiums to go just because of the location, the experience, and, hey, I mean, there's got to be some interesting stuff with that fan base because they are. This is random, but apparently Denver had this cultural phenomenon last year where a bunch of anime fans were joined in because they had a show come out about racing, basically humans as horses, not like in a weird way, but apparently brought in this whole other fan base for Denver. So it was just weird mixture, this weird culture that they had, and they're on the rise again. So you're going to see a lot more Denver presence just in the NFL media world. So for me, great fan base, very up-to-date stadium with it being built in 21, fantastic city. It shares with the Colorado Rockies, but I could make the argument that it's a football town. So, hey, behind Arizona Cardinals for me. Or ahead of the Arizona Cardinals, I apologize. Stadium-wise, ahead.
I'm unsure if I want to put it in A or B tier. It's a little dated. I'm not like super passionate about this take. I do know that Denver is exploring getting a new stadium though. That's starting to come out, so it makes me wonder what the deal is. But to me, it's hard to parse whether it's just owners' greed and they're them wanting this real estate development out in whatever community to make more money and maximize profits, or if Mile High actually has some issues. It was built in 2001. That's when their first season was. It's cool aesthetically. I really like the way it looks on the outside. I think, like you were saying, it seems like Broncos fans always have a good time at these games. It hosts not only the Denver Broncos, but also hosts a lot of national soccer team friendly matches. So it's used for soccer as well. I'm cool with putting it in A. I don't think I'd put it above the Cardinals, though. If this was exclusively my list, I'd probably have it in B, but I'm cool with having it in A because I really don't have too many, I don't know what to dang it on. It's more memorable to me than M&T Bank Stadium. They feel kind of similar in certain ways, but I do feel like it's more significant to that. I mean, I would put it right on the edge of this. I'd probably lean B, but I'm fine with giving it an A.
How about this? We'll keep it at the bottom of A tier for now.
We'll finish the rest of these.
All right, next we got, of course, Ford Field. It's also another, just Detroit football is historical. You're always going to have it on Thanksgiving. The Ford Field was built in 2002. It's very well kept up. Despite it being, like we said, around the same year that the Broncos had built their stadium, they've done a really good job. The Fords have with making sure it's up to date. I've, in terms of myself, I've never been up to see the field, but I've never heard of any complaints about the stadium myself. Have you been up to see Ford Field?
I've seen it in person. Never been there.
I was just curious on that because I know you've made some trips up to Michigan because you've seen the Wolverines play plenty of times. But in a dome, it apparently very good views from what I've been seeing. Great atmosphere. The Lions they're a great fan base, and they're finally kind of off the wagon where they're good again. It's just like any other time when you're in downtown Detroit. They are. The proximity to downtown Detroit, Comerica Park, Motown Museum, Greektown. So it's not one of those, it's in the burbs. It is in downtown Detroit. When you're in the downtown area like that, hey, guess what? Tailgating, parking, going to have a little bit of an issue there. And that's why I think we're seeing so many different potential stadiums being forming their own cities, like you'd say, is because you get the benefit of amenities, the parking and whatnot. But, for me, it is a classic stadium. We all see it every year. I've never heard of anybody complain about it. It's definitely iconic. Because I think it's on the same kind of threshold as I'd put it along to Denver. Maybe I put it in between Arizona and Denver. What's your thought process?
I'd put it in A tier. I certainly like it more than the Broncos Stadium. I think it's very nice. It's very well kept up, like you were saying. It is a stadium, even though it was built in 2002, that has maintained a lot of significance, and it seems like it hasn't it's aged very well. This stadium was the site of many big events when it was built. I know it hosted the Final Four, I think, in like 2006, which is a big deal for when it was new, when it was the shiny new toy. This place was a place to be for a lot of big events. It's still really good. It's been probably outclassed some by some of the newer stadiums, but that doesn't make it bad by any means. It's still a very great venue. It's a great home for Detroit, and I love, how it's named after Ford, and it's got really cool like vibes in there. It looks really cool on the inside. It's also kind of near, like you were saying, Comerica Park, where the Detroit Tigers play. And it's in a part of downtown where they're starting to build out more and give people more amenities that come from outside to watch Lions games. Downtown Detroit's actually starting to recover some, and this is only going to help the experience around the stadium. So I think this is a solid A tier.
All right, next we have a classic. If you want to talk about historical, it's Lambeau Field.
Just put it up there.
Yeah, it's going to be.
You could explain, but yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to go into detail because I've mentioned them so many times already. They are a team that's got, once again, one of the older stadiums in the league, 1957, but they've done a fantastic job with all different type of innovations, renovations, all different kinds of stuff. This is I give the Packers all the credit in the world, because if you want to talk about putting fans first, this is the organization that should pop in your head first, because they don't have to do this. They don't have to stay in Green Bay. There's better markets, but they have the most passionate, dedicated fan base. You can make an argument of any sports franchise. So they got to be an S tier. It's one of those where this is on the short list of where I want to go. I want to go up there. I don't know if I want to go in the wintertime. I'm not built like that. I'm sorry. But Lambeau's got to be S tier. There's no argument.
This is the NFL's only pilgrimage site for football fans. For baseball fans, people make pilgrimages to Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles, Wrigley Field in Chicago, Fenway Park in Boston. The NFL has pretty much gotten rid of a lot of its historic stadiums because they've been outdated. This stands the test of time and actually is the blueprint for what I was explaining earlier with Cincinnati. Continuously invest in your primary facility year over year over year, and after a certain point in time, it becomes one of the most unique venues in all of pro sports. It was built in the late 50s. Now it is a beautiful, beautiful stadium with a massive atrium and great tailgating in a smaller community. It's totally unique in that instance. So I think Green Bay is at the top of, I don't know if it's the top of this list, but it's hard to compare that and Jerry World because they're two different things. They're two different vibes. This is classic Americana, Lambeau Field is. If you're a European person coming over to the United States to watch an NFL game, I think this is the place you go. It's going to be hard to get tickets, but this is the place you go. The Packers have invested year over year over year, tinkering, making the seats better, adding boxes. It doesn't look anything like it did in 1957, but the bones are still there. That's why this stadium is so special, and it's one of the reasons why Packers fans are not only a national fan base, but some of the best fans in the NFL.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. There's not much of an argument here. Next, we have one of our division rivals, and that is NRG Stadium with the Texans. Built in 2002. It's an interesting stadium. So it's got some very unique architecture. It's not in the heart of like a downtown Houston or anything like that, but it's not a drive off either. I believe it was one of the first stadiums to have a retractable roof back in 2002. It's currently hosting for the World Cup. They've done a pretty good job keeping it all together. It's one of those stadiums that's not going to blow your mind, but it's not bad either. For me, it's B tier. It's in the same tier as the Ravens, where I'm like, hey, I'm sure it's a great experience. Would like to go someday. Is it at the top of the list? No, but it's it's one of those. They did such a good job building it initially that they really haven't had to do a whole lot of reinvestment into it or feel the need to innovate just yet.
This is a B tier for me as well. It's kind of forgettable in some instances, but it is the host site of many, many, many big events. It hosts the Final Four. It's got the World Cup right now, so it transcends football as a big market event venue. But as far as the Texans go and Texans home games, I'm going to put it in a B tier. I think it's all right. It's definitely above the stadiums in C tier. It's nowhere near obsolete. It's still, to this day, very relevant in the national event landscape, but it just doesn't really scream to me super memorable. So B tier also.
I'm going to let you lead this next one off because I know you've spent some time at this stadium. I have an opinion on it. I think it's a fantastic stadium. Never been there myself. It's on my short list, but take it away with Lucas Oil Field.
I put this at the top of A tier. I don't know if it's an S tier stadium. It may have been when it first came out, but now I think that pool has been diluted a little bit by the Raiders and the Rams, et cetera, et cetera. But this is a great, great, great stadium. It feels like you're in a massive, warehouse, and that sounds bad, but it's super interesting. Like, they have these big bay windows on the north side of the stadium where you can just look out into downtown Indianapolis, and they'll open those windows, sometimes. Or I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on that, but it also has a retractable roof, so you can play indoors, outdoors. I've been to this place probably 3 or 4 times. It's the most recent NFL stadium I went to. I went and watched the Colts and Phillip Rivers at the end of last year play my Jacksonville Jaguars like usual. So this is an A-tier stadium. It will be standing for a long, long time. It is very nice. The fan accommodations are great. There's a lot of history. It feels like a football cathedral, even though it's not that old. And I don't mean cathedral. I don't want to dilute that term, but I do think it's kind of like a football palace in certain instances. It's one of the first things you notice driving in to Indianapolis off the highway. It's just like, bam, there it is. And then you get in there. It's very clean. It's very big. Colts fans are obviously really great. So I have a lot of good things to say about it. I think it's at the top of A tier for me.
No argument for me. It is a iconic looking stadium. They hold the combine there every year. It is definitely a centerpiece for the NFL in terms of NFL stadiums. But I agree. I think initially S tier, but some of these newer stadiums that's came out the past 5 years, it's got to be knocked down a notch. But I don't think it's got to change a bit. It's iconic. I like it. Next that we have, of course, the Jacksonville Jaguars, Everbank Stadium. They've been doing some massive renovations the past few years, and we've seen this. I was jogging my memory as we were setting up this tier list. I'm like, this is the team that has the pools in the end zones, right? This is pretty unique. Shad Khan is uber rich. He can do as much as he wants with this stadium. That being said, hey, they're not expecting some of these renovations to be done till 28. So we're still in the process of it. They've definitely got some stuff implemented. For right now, I'm going to put it in B tier, but I am curious to see what the final product looks like. I mean, you might know better on this topic than me. I would say maybe high B tier, kind of on the edge of A tier, but I could definitely see hey, if you think it belongs maybe in upper C tier because of we're still in the process of renovation, that I'm not going to argue it. But it seems like it's a fine stadium. They're trying to get it to the next level, and we're still in the process of it. But Jacksonville's kind of it's a unique, just because it is a newer franchise. They're, the fan base is still kind of expanding on it. They're definitely passionate, dedicated. Duval, they're there, but it just doesn't stand out to me. But I would love to go see the stadium and just see what it's about. But I as of right now, besides, hey, there's the pool. That's the one renovation I could think of just off the top of my head. but they're going in the right direction. What's your thought process on this B tier rating for me?
I think is currently constituted the way the stadium looks at this very moment. It's lower C tier. I think it's it's very generic, like you were saying. I like the teal seats, but there's a reason why they're investing all of this money into the stadium. I think it's become very dated at this moment in time. You could probably put it after the Bengals. I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
Now, once it finishes, it will be above the Bengals. It kind of reminds me of a very big college football stadium, but not one of the classic ones. One of the ones they would have built in like the 90s or something like that. It's got very like 90s vibes to me, which is subsequently when the Jaguars, or coincidentally when the Jaguars were first playing back in the 90s. So it's kind of boring. It's kind of dated looking. It has hosted a Super Bowl before, but nothing really stands out. And I think it's very forgettable. And its most interesting aspects are kind of just gimmicks. And I think the way the stadium is at this very moment is low tier in the NFL, and that's not to say nothing of the Jaguars fans or their passion, but I think they probably would agree that this place needs to be renovated. And what I will say, though, is, let me look it up really quick, not to derail it, but once they get this bad boy done, once this place gets renovated, we're talking whole different level here, okay? These renderings, and I know we can't always just trust renderings, but these look incredible. I mean, this will make it into an entirely new echelon for the Jaguars. I mean, it'll be a whole Florida-based experience at that point. Right now, it's just kind of a generic place. So, C tier for now. Once they finish this bad boy, if they do it right, this could be a fringe S tier.
Excited for it. Let's see it. Next, we have Arrowhead Stadium. This is definitely another darling of the NFL. I wouldn't say in terms of like architecture it really stands out. It definitely has a unique kind of at the 300 level, the kind of the wave in it, and they built the stadium that way. Hey, it's very loud. The sound comes down and it fills up this lower bowl. One point I don't know if it still holds the record, if it's them or Seattle that has it currently, but definitely one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL. It's based on where it's at. They're basically saying, hey, it's really enriched into the city's culture, and historical sites. Hey, like I said, I talked about Baltimore and the food. Guess what? Arrowhead Stadium, Kansas City Chiefs have heavily leaned into that. It is a unique experience. It's one of those that, once again, put it on your short list because I think it is an interesting destination with kind of this twist that not many other cities can do, where it's kind of modern and traditional at the same time. It's also currently hosting one of the World Cup sites. It's a massive place for concerts and events. It had, back in 2014, I believe, it had a pretty massive renovation probably to get it to the point it is now. So, hey, they've done a really good job of keeping it rolling, keeping it moving, upgrading it. It was built in 1972, so that tells you something. I'm not going to put it in S tier, but I think it's along the same line with, let's say, the Colts and the Cardinals there. Great stadium. You should go see it. I think the fans really kind of push it to that above experience, but they've done everything right to keep a stadium that is over 50 years old as highly regarded as it is.
This is an A tier for me. You could put it above the Colts or right next. I think that's fine.
Okay.
Either one. I'm cool with either one, to be honest, because this is special for all of the reasons you just laid out. I think Kansas City is very lucky to have a historic football stadium like this. They've maintained it really well. I've heard anecdotes from people who have been here that they've had great times at the Chiefs games, and they're very hospitable. Maybe not the fans. I'm sure the fans are too, but like I've heard people talking about going to a box game at the watching a game in a box, essentially. God, I'm hungover. But But yeah, they went there, and it was a great experience from what I've heard. This is a, like you said, stadium that has the capacity to host World Cup games and other big events. The Chiefs fans are very loud. This holds the decibel record for sound. So this is one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL. It's historic. The exterior, it's very 70s. I mean, this is a very, very 70s looking stadium, but it also is one of the most special in American sports, and I give it some brownie points for that. Unfortunately, and this bums me out, is that the Chiefs are moving to Kansas to build another slop stadium where they just try to copy the Raiders and get a bunch of public money and do that, and that's fine. But again,
when it's needed, it's fine. This is not needed.
This doesn't feel needed. They could say certain things about Arrowhead. Maybe I haven't done enough research. So, Chiefs fans, if this is needed, please let us know in the comments. But to me, this feels like an inverse Soldier Field. While Soldier Field is not tenable, it's not usable anymore, according to the fans and the ownership. This stadium has hosted many big games very recently. It feels very relevant. It feels very important to the modern football landscape. And for it to just go away because Clark Hunt is a douchebag or something is unfortunate. So, and sorry, Clark, but come on, bro. I mean, you're kind of sticking it to the fans on this one, in my opinion, but it is what it is. But this is an A-tier stadium.
These next few are going to be pretty easy. I think we can all agree SoFi Stadium is, if not close to the belle of the ball in terms of the NFL stadium-wise, definitely on the short list, probably top 3, if not number 1. Just for shits and giggles, I'm going to put the Chargers at the end of this list because they're just a visitor in that stadium. But it's got everything that you want to. I believe, now that I'm sitting here talking about it, they did beat Dallas for kind of the largest just visible board up above the playing field there. It's in L.A. It's got all the bells and whistles on it. I don't know what parking looks like. Does it matter? You're going to let's say the updated Coliseum for Football World. It's fantastic. I'm sure we've both seen videos on what it looks like. It's just fantastic. If you want, add something in on there. What am I going to complain about with SoFi besides the Chargers living there as a rental, as a roommate that shouldn't be there? That's my only thing. This is a Rams stadium.
This is an S+++. This is probably the greatest stadium in the world anywhere. I think this is a incredible monument to sport and events and live entertainment. It was the host of the Super Bowl where the Bengals played and the Rams played. Great game. It's hosted the World Cup now. I feel it's been like in our lives for like 5 years now. I feel like it hasn't aged a day. Every time I see it on TV, I always say, I'm like, cannot believe this place exists. It looks brand new. I can't, even with the new stadiums they're building in the NFL and even around the world, I still don't think anywhere is touching this place. So its ring video board that goes all the way around is incredible. They have the translucent roof where sun comes in. They play on a grass surface, thank God. I love this place. I don't want to, Stan Kroenke, I'm sorry, St. Louis fans, so I'm not commenting on that, but because you may not like him. But as far as a real estate development project, holy cow. This is the greatest stadium in the world. I don't have anything else to add. The Rams fans and I guess the Chargers fans are extremely lucky to have this place. L.A., once again, just going all out on sports entertainment venues.
All right, so I don't think this is much to argue either. Allegiant Stadium, one of the newest ones in the league. The Black Hole. They've definitely made an impact in Vegas. My only question is, where does it fit among the S tier at this point? But I mean, it's super cool the way it looks. It definitely, even though the Raiders are Oakland, they did a really good job of making sure that they were going to stand out in Las Vegas. You had to. Same thing. Everything's up to date. It's fantastic. It's weird seeing Mark Davis have this shiny new toy, but he pulled it off. There's not much to say about it. It's one of those when it pops on and they do like the overview before the game starts of the stadium over the top. You're like, whoa, this is definitely probably is the most unique looking stadium in all of America, if not all the world. Very almost futuristic looking. I think this was the inspiration for the new Nissan Stadium that's coming in with Tennessee to a degree. It's very, very cool. Definitely, like if we're making a trip to Vegas in the fall, like with anybody, I'm like, I think you should check it out because I think this is an experience. This is something unique. And of course, the reviews are going to be fantastic on it. So the argument for me is it's like, where does it fit in this tier here? Is it better than Jerry World? I don't know if I can go that far. Is it better than Mercedes-Benz? I would put it maybe a little bit above, maybe here, but I'm not upset anywhere on this slot. Do you have
I'd
an
put
opinion
it.
on
I'd
that?
put it a little behind. I'd put the Falcons.
Yeah, see that this is where I'm at.
I'd lean
like,
the
right here.
Falcons honestly a little bit, but
Okay.
I to me it's just you're flipping a coin
I
essentially.
think that's a fine art. Yeah, agreed.
I've seen the stadium in person. It's incredibly cool. The exterior is awesome. It looks like just totally jet black. It reminds you of a Star Wars ship. The on-field product leaves a lot to be desired, but they do play on natural grass. I think they may do the same thing that the Cardinals do, where they have the track that rolls it outside into the desert and then back so they can manage the grass. I mean, we really don't even have to get into it. The Raiders were playing in one of the worst stadiums in all of sports, and now they play in arguably one of the best stadiums in all of sports. This is a layup, and I'm sure British people would call this place a dump and say it's a soulless, corporate whatever, and that may be kind of true. The second point, but this place is really awesome, and I'm gonna give it a S plus. It's just a layup.
Yeah, the next one we have in the list, I think this is a kind of an eye of the beholder one. This is Hard Rock Stadium. It's still, because it's in Miami, it still hosts a lot of large events. It's still, I believe it's also hosting the World Cup. On that one, the national championship for college football was just there. The Miami Hurricanes, they use this as a stadium. You have the Dolphins that are there. It was built in 1987, and it's definitely seen better days, and it needs to have some innovation, some renovation in there because, hey, guess what? You ain't finding any other land in Miami. You're not doing it. You built it at the right time. For me, I think personally the stadium is probably top of C tier, but because of the location, that's why it gets everything in it, because it is Miami, and nothing else can in Miami for the most part can hold that event attraction. But if you want to put it at the end of B tier, I'm not upset with that either. I just think, just from what I've seen personally, I'm like, it's a okay stadium, it's nice, but I think you're like, this is the Miami nightlife, all that. I don't think I see or hear anything that's like, man, the Hard Rock Cafe really stands out because of this. I'm like, the canopies, I don't know. Like, I just feel like it's benefiting from being Miami, not that the city is benefiting from Hard Rock Cafe or Hard Rock Stadium being there. What's your thoughts?
I'd say it's probably at the end of B tier.
Okay, yeah.
I'm cool with putting it in C. I do feel like there's a differentiator between maybe like the Bengals. I don't know if I'd felt comfortable with it being in the same category as like Everbank or Paycor or something, but I definitely agree that the stadium is worse than the situation that surrounds it. actually a pretty old stadium that's been renovated a number of times, so you could see the kind of spiral walkways going up into parts of the stadium, just like Arrowhead has. That's a very 70s thing. It does host a lot of big games, big events. They've done a great job renovating it. They put a lot of money into it. Again, even with all the renovations, it's still a stadium that was built in, the 70s, I believe. Let me make sure on that. It was built in the 80s, 1987. So they keep updating it, but I agree with you. But it is a marquee site on hosting big games. It must be good enough because they keep getting them back, and it can't just be because it's in Miami. I mean, it has to have some level of amenities. But now that I'm looking at this list really quick, what do you think about Mile High? I feel like I'm really feeling B tier for Mile High now.
I'm not against it. I'm not against it because I think you make a good point. I think it's the name itself. You hear about how difficult it is for players to play, how hard it is to stuff. And I think that's one of the reasons that they talked about is that, like, hey, we think we can get a better design and maybe we can get some bigger events here because it sounds like unless you're here already, it can be a hassle for people or events coming in out of the area. So I'm fine with that. I'm going to contest and put it at the top of B.
I think top of B is totally cool. But I think right now, we're almost done with it. We have a couple more, or a few more. I think this is very accurate. Like, honestly, I think this is a very accurate list that we have so far. There hasn't really been a lot of contention, but there's a lot less variance than there used to be. I feel like in the stadiums.
Yes. The next one that we got here is the Viking Stadium. They had just built it in 2016, U.S. Bank Stadium. Definitely iconic. I think a lot of people initially, when it came out, and they had the giant glass, entrance there and walkway that you could also kind of look out. Similar, not to a similar thought process with Lucas Oil Field, but that stadium is nice. It is a spectacle. I love the horn that they have that they blow before the game right at the top there, and they're starting to do the skull clap. It's Minnesota. You can think what you want about the state, but man, that stadium is sweet. It is still. I'm putting it in S tier because it still has. It's not like SoFi or Jerry World, but it definitely feels fresher. And it feels like it's got a little bit more to it than, let's just say, Lucas Oil Field or with Kansas City, Arizona Stadium. So, for me, maybe I put it right ahead of the Packers there in S tier. But phenomenal stadium. It's very cool. One of the most unique architectures that they have. They built the stadium to be very loud. Also one of those, loud, great atmosphere stadiums. But concerts, NCAA tournaments, international sports, same thing. It is in that region, it is the place to go for any type of event. Like if you're playing at U.S. Bank Stadium, you're doing pretty good for your profession.
This is an S tier for me. I think it's got some of the most unique architecture in all of world sports. I think the Vikings fans add another element to it because they're so loud and proud. I don't really have too much on it. It's located in downtown Minneapolis, so it's easy to get to for people who live down there, and I just think it's a very unique design. It's going to be standing for a long, long time. It's very technologically advanced. One of the premier venues in all of American sports.
All right, next we have Gillette Stadium, which is, let's just say it does about everything right, but it doesn't necessarily stand out either, if that makes sense. It was built in 2002. It's funny. I'm looking at this ranking list to kind of help put me in perspective with some of these too. And it has the number one ranked lighthouse in the U.S. in terms of height, which is funny because of the coastline. But it is an iconic stadium just because if you think the Patriots dynasty and Gillette Stadium, especially with the one end zone and the background of the walkway there, really stands out for me. But it's a traditional stadium, kind of. You get that feel from it. I think this is like, if the Bengals had this stadium, they would love it, and I think for the New England area, this is a great stadium. I think this is what your region needs. Don't be in a dome. Do not put New England in a dome. Don't ever do it. You play outside. That's what your people, want. That's what they represent. Does it have all the bells and whistles on it? No. But I know they've done a really good job making sure that thing is up to date as possible. We haven't heard any talks of them moving. I don't see it happening. They are a set up regional cornerstone. You talk about, hey, this is Boston sports. I'm like, New England's in the quad right there with them. I'd put them in A tier. Where you could put them at, you have your debate. I'm going to put them definitely ahead of the Lions, and I'm going to put them. I'm either behind or right at before the Arizona Cardinals. That's where I'm at. I don't think they're more prominent than Arrowhead, but we could have the conversation about the Cardinals here.
I was actually thinking they should be top of B tier, but
top of B. Okay.
I think it's a little overrated of a stadium. It's very significant because of the Patriots dynasty, and it definitely is important enough to host large events that are outside. It's hosting the World Cup right now. I don't know if it would be doing that if Robert Kraft wasn't a very influential owner in the MLS with the New England Revolution. Same thing with Arrowhead and the Kansas City Chiefs. But it's kind of in that early 2000s stadium era, but it does have a lot of interesting aspects of it on the exterior. And it's got, I do think of the Patriots games very fondly, not for New England, but, the venues hosted a lot of very cool events. But to me, I think it's like a better Mile High. I do think the Lions and the Cardinal stadiums and the Colts stadiums all outclass it. And I don't want to I'm looking at this list now, and it seems to me that there is a pattern here, and maybe it's unfair to these teams, but I think we're pretty accurate. We definitely have given favor to indoor dome teams in these stadiums, but I think they're all kind of better, in my opinion. I mean, the only stadiums we have in S and A are Green Bay, outdoor stadiums, Green Bay and Arrowhead, which are both historic venues. Everything else is indoors, and then we kind of have in my opinion, the Pats and the Broncos and the Ravens and all that. And I think we're doing it right, but I just noticed that. But to me, this is top of B tier. I wouldn't have a real too strong of an argument if you wanted to put it in an A. I just would put it in more of the class of like the Ravens and the Broncos stadiums.
I'm not going to push back on it. I think that's a fine argument to make.
We may have some debate on this one, but I want to hear where you go first.
Man, the Caesars Superdome. This is tough. A very historical land site, not just in football, but just in terms of historical significance, especially with Hurricane Katrina and special moments that followed with the Saints with this disaster. Man, this is very much New Orleans. The look of it, just the feel, the aura of, it's like, hey, the electric, the vibrance, it's very loud, passionate, almost like, I hate to say it, but like a jazz touch to it. It is one of those stadiums that I think if you were like, oh, it's in, I don't know, let's just say it's in Seattle, they're tearing that shit down as soon as they can. That's special in New Orleans. They're going to keep that thing alive as much as they can, and I don't blame them. They've done, it was built in, I believe, 1975, so it is an older dome. I want to say it might be one of the oldest. It is the oldest dome in the NFL, and they've done what they can with innovations and whatnot. Man, this is tough. Just in terms of the stadium, I'm going the experience. Oh, man. I'm going to put this at the bottom of B tier. But, man, there's so much surrounding this to where, if you wanted to make an argument up or down, I'll listen to it. What's your thoughts on that?
I'll argue down. I think it should be top of C tier or the end of B tier. And I kind of sucks because this feels like a thing or a stadium that should be in like the A tier. And we list off all the historical reasons about why it should be considered that. I mean, this is like, in many aspects, the heart of New Orleans, and I want to give it that respect, which is why ultimately I do think we should put it in the B tier, and it still hosts big games. I'd even put it above Miami's stadium.
I honestly, I was thinking that myself. I'm like, is it worse than Hard Rock? I'm like, I'm fine with this. I'm happy with this spot.
I want to give it some respect, like a tip of the cap, but it's also. We can't sit here and probably honestly say that it's one of the best venues in the NFL. It's one of the best venues, but it's not one of the best venues, if that makes sense to people. It housed people during Hurricane Katrina. It has been the host of many a Super Bowls. Drew Brees played there for a long time and elevated the Saints and the city. So I want to respect this place. It's really cool. It's a nice 70s institution that's still kicking, kind of like Arrowhead, but I don't think it's of the same quality as Arrowhead. So I think B is the right place for it, but C tier could also be a home for it. I just think it's got a little more pizzazz and kind of like heart than a lot of the C tier stadiums, which seem to be pretty generic.
This next one is also going to be an interesting one with MetLife Stadium because, at least in terms of, I think from the players' perspective, this has got to be a bottom three. Just from what they say, they don't like the turf. It's hosted a Super Bowl. It hosts large events. It's linked to two historic, iconic franchises that I could honestly say, legacy-wise, have both been underwhelming. But at least from my standpoint, I'm sitting there. I've also wondered, like, what makes MetLife special? And I don't know because nothing stands out to it. It's very generic. It was built in 2010, so they went with their like I say, I'm a modern traditional stadium where the thing is massive. It's sold 82,000, and they have the amenities there. And it's in New Jersey, so your two teams are liars. And apparently it's got good accessibility, good crowd management. It's easy to get in and out, and that's probably the reason why they built it in New Jersey and not in New York. That makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Also, you don't have room in New York. Very easy to get along with the transit system. It's not a bad stadium. It just doesn't stand out. And that's what makes it tough because it's like, at least, Gillette, you can make it stand out for this, or Houston's got the dome, or the Saints, the history. I'm like, what does MetLife have? I don't know, but it's not the same. It's not Paycor. It's not Cleveland Stadium, Huntington. It's not that. I'm going to put it in B tier, but I'm going to put it at the bottom of B tier just because it's uninspiring. I'm like, this is a New York. These are two New York teams, and this brings nothing to me. When they do the overcast shot of the stadium above, I'm like, that stadium, it does not impress me. I've never been like, wow. I've never been like, it's ugly either, but it's just, it's mid, I have no problem personally if I wanted to put it at the bottom of B tier.
I think it's honestly at the top of C tier. I think it's a class above the rest of the C tiers, but I don't feel like it's unfair to put Denver, New England, Baltimore, all of those above it. I think this place leaves a lot to be desired. This is not a stadium built to stand the test of time. They will eventually have to replace this, I think, in probably about 25 years when other stadiums completely outclass it and New York is missing out on events. The play on the field is dog shit. The both ownership groups are also pretty not great. So a lot of Epstein stuff going on with that, and it doesn't really have anything to do with the stadium. But to me, dude, if you build a stadium in the largest city in the United States, and I know it's in New Jersey, but it hosts both teams, and then you look at the one on the West Coast that hosts both teams, and they're not even comparable. I mean, these legitimately aren't even comparable. SoFi teabags this place. I mean, this is boring. It's a big nothing burger. I don't even feel like New York fans defend it. I feel like some places are like the way I went to bat for Paycor, and I'm not a Bengals fan, but I was like, well, here's why it's XYZ, and maybe not as bad as you think, even though it is, boring and blah, 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 blah. This place, if you spend the amount of money you spent on it, you completely underwhelmed. Now nobody talks about you, and if anything, they neg you because it's not that great. It's gonna be a C tier ranking because of those reasons. The other thing is, it essentially came out at the same time as the Cowboys Stadium, and the Cowboys Stadium just completely blows this out of the water, and nobody talks about this one unless it's in a negative light. So to me, that's C tier. They completely fumbled. They dropped the ball. It doesn't have the history of Miami or New Orleans. There's been one Super Bowl here, and I've never heard anybody talk about going back. They're going to play the World Cup final here, but that's not because of this stadium. That's a nod to New York, and I think respect is to New York as the largest place and the place with the best transit and everything like that. And also the last thing, this place was built on a swamp, so you could see the New York skyline in the background, but it's kind of just in this ugly area that it just leaves a lot to be desired. I think this is the epitome of a C-tier stadium. It's got some good things going for it. I'm sure it's not a dump, but they totally missed the boat on this.
Yeah, I have no argument with that. Just uninspiring. All right, I just looked at our new ad, and it's I can't believe it's not butter is representing the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me ask this: have you been to Lincoln Finance Field?
I've seen it in person, never been.
Okay. So I was just curious because I know you had a good chance of attending an Eagles game at some point. So Lincoln Financial Field, built in 2003, holds a little under 70,000. Of course, iconic city, iconic fan base. Definitely sounds like a fantastic time. If you're not an Eagles fan, when you show up, just have an Eagles gear on. I got a feeling that's just in that situation there. But in terms of I've heard, hey, it's got great views. The pictures of it look fantastic. It stands out. They've done some excellent jobs just maintaining the stadium, keeping up to date. I've heard it's an awesome atmosphere, not just with the fans, but hey, Philadelphia, they got some really good food. They bring it into the stadium. They have it there. There's really well-maintained facilities. For Philadelphia, whatever opinion you may have it, they're like, man, it's super clean. The bathrooms are awesome. Everything's up to date. They've done a really good job. It's an iconic stadium. It's one of those where I think if it wasn't the city of Philadelphia, this would be a larger place to hold more national or potentially international events. I think this belongs in the A tier. I'm going to put this above the Lions. That's where I'm going to settle them at.
I agree. I think this is an A tier stadium, and the atmosphere in it is always really good. The Eagles fans show up. They're very passionate. It is in kind of this big sports complex next to where the Phillies play, and I have been to a Phillies game. And then the Sixers, I believe, also play out there. So the Eagles Stadium, Lincoln Financial Field, it's also hosting a World Cup game, definitely deserves to be an A tier. It is a really, really good outdoor stadium. It's one that was built in the early 2000s and will likely stand for many, many years to come. And it's got a lot of history, which I really like. So I think this is a solid A tier.
All right, moving on to the next one, we have Acrisure Stadium. I will always think of this as Heinz Field. I miss.
Let's
the
just call it
ketchup
Heinz
bottle.
Field. No, I don't. I
Let's
for
just do
sure
it.
F you guys. No offense.
Heinz Field.
This is Heinz Field.
Classic, iconic, well up to date. A great traditional stadium mixed in with great innovations. Pittsburgh loves their football. Football town. Steelers are kings in their city. Have you? I'll ask this again. Have you been to a Steelers game?
Seen it in person. Been to a Pirates game, but no, I've never been to
okay.
a. I've seen this in
Start
person.
going to
though.
baseball games, man. Nobody cares.
They're just so expensive. The NFL
Who goes to
games.
Pittsburgh to be like, I'm going to go watch the Pirates?
Well, at the stadium,
okay.
if you're doing if you're a stadium head, the Pirates PNC Park is up there. That is a great
okay,
park.
that's fair. That's fair. Anyway, I went off topic there, but Heinz Field is fantastic. Built in 2001. It's basically everything that I've said about the Eagles. Repeat it. It's hey, Pennsylvania does right by their sports. That just is what it is. Iconic stadium. You need to go to it. Do I think it has 100% all the bells and whistles to it? No, it's not an S tier. I'm gonna put it right by, and you can make the argument on who you want to put ahead of each other, but that's where I'm at. They are right next to each other. I'm going to say just for, oh God, I'm just going to leave the Steelers behind the Eagles. That's where I'm at, and that's just me coin flip right there.
I don't have a lot to say on this one. I agree. It's an A tier. You could see the Pittsburgh skyline in the background. It's got those yellow seats, which are pretty cool, very unique. This is a classic NFL outdoor stadium. People really respect Heinz Field. This is a football. I used the term earlier, football cathedral. This is one of these places that has seen winning. The fan base is really good. A tier for me. Just outdoor, gritty. That's what I think about when I think about this place. Hard-nosed fans getting hammered and screaming. So good on you, Steelers fans.
All right, next we have the Seattle Seahawks with Lumen Field. This is my dad is a Seahawks fan, so I know more about Seattle than I should. And I've seen more Seattle games than I probably should from being on the opposite side of the United States. But man, we knew about it. Lumen Field is a fantastic venue. It's iconic. Built in 2002. The 12s, when you have a nickname for your stadium, you're doing pretty damn good for yourself. They do a wonderful job with the way they built it, similar to Arrowhead Field, where the sound just bears down. One of the coolest parts of the stadium is in the end zones where it shows the skyline of the city there, and it's right there. It's basically just they have a small opening here, basically 3 rows or 3 columns of seats, and it breaks off, and most of the seating is kind of just stacked on the sides with this large overhead hanging canopy, and that keeps the sound bearing down into the stadium there. But it's very unique end zone perspective, and believe it or not, if you want to be in the end zone, technically they're usually cheaper than the midfield levels because of the way that they have it set up. It is right in the heart of downtown there. Very cool area, awesome fans. Just because of the uniqueness of the stadium, where it's at, the location, the way that it's built, I'm gonna put this at the bottom of S tier.
I was going to put it in S tier. I think this is a emphatic S tier stadium, especially for it being an outdoor stadium. It's one of the best outdoor venues in the entire league. We saw it yesterday with the U.S. men's national team game against Australia. I think the fans always show up. They always do it right. The sound reverberates off those canopies. It's a very Pacific Northwest thing to have those canopies over top the seats. This stadium continues to get its flowers year in and year out. The Seahawks just won the Super Bowl, so it'll be rocking next year. They host big events. It's very iconic. I think even this is one of those places you just want to go if you're a sports fan. So kudos to Seattle. I think this is for me the last stadium on this list I'm going to grant an S tier. I think this is the last S tier for me.
I agree. I'm in the same boat here. Next, we have Levi Stadium, which is not in San Francisco, 40 miles south of where old Candlestick Park once stood. It is, how do I say, it's also one of those that I think the stadium gets a little bit more credit than shows. Built in 2014, holds 68,000. So the amenities are there, but like if you just pull up pictures of it, it kind of looks like it's this very, very bland stadium. You just, oh, there's all the red seats. And it's a true bowl, which is, you don't see as often with so many of these new stadiums here. I will say it kind of gives a little bit more uniqueness or a different feeling for me than, like, let's say the Jets or the Giants. I don't know if that's just because of the history of the 49ers, where it's like, hey, the traditional look with this, historical team, one of the NFL's, storybook chapters and history and so many players that they've had. And you can tell in the games, like, hey, you got a lot of fans that travel out that. Despite being 40 miles away, that place is always packed. It's always a tough environment to play in, but it doesn't stand out to me like, I really need to go see the 49ers stadium. At least looking on the inside, I don't have a picture pulled up on the outside here, and is that really going to change my opinion a whole lot? No, because I'm going to spend more time in the stadium than outside of the stadium. I'm going to put this the very bottom of B tier myself.
I like that. I was going to put it in A tier, but I'm not going to argue. To me, I would put
maybe not the bottom.
I would put maybe the top of B tier.
Maybe I'm going to put it right between the Texans and the Ravens.
I think this has a lot going for it, but there are some glaring issues. For one, the sun is really bad. The way they oriented the stadium gets in players' eyes, gets in fans' eyes. It's very sunny out there in Northern California. The other thing is that it is in the path of, I believe this to be true, an airport runway. So there is a lot of planes that fly over top, and of course you have the nuclear reactor electric substation that melts people's Achilles and ACLs, and just ruins careers out there in San Francisco, or I mean Santa Clara, not in San Francisco. It's also super far away from the city, which isn't in itself a bad thing, but it's like, okay, it kind of lacks aura in that sense. I like the red seats. I think it looks cool. The other thing that's weird about this place is it looks like the like white skinny like beams, steel beams on the outside make it look like cheap. I don't know what else. Not even cheap. It looks like you could like blow it down. Like the big bad wolf can come along and just blow down this house of sticks. So it's got some weird elements to it. I think it's all right. It's a big game venue, but it's been around long enough now where we've heard some criticisms. Now it's still a good stadium, I think, all in all, but it does have some negatives to it. So I'm totally cool with putting it in B tier and not just granting it an A tier because it was built in 2014 and it's got tech or whatever.
It just does nothing special for me. I think, man, this is such a newer stadium, but you got stadiums that are 15 years older that have more heart than yours does. I don't know. It bothers me. Next one, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The first thing that pops in my head is always the cannons. I definitely need to be tested for some mental capacity, but that's the first thing I think of, and I think that's what probably 90% of people think about with the Buccaneer Stadium is the pirate ship and the cannons. Now, I don't remember if the pirate ship is still there. I know they have the cannons there, but that's always been iconic for me. It was built in 1998, Raymond James Stadium, 69,000 capacity. It apparently also has the only animatronic parrot that greets fans as they're walking into the stadium. I don't know what that's about. Sticking on with the pirate theme. I like it. It's also, because it's Tampa, holds concerts. It's got a pretty good seats. It's got a pretty good area. It's a very open stadium. It's one of those, like, it's above average. That's what it is. Tampa's a very unique city. I'm sure they're very passionate about their fans, but if you've ever been in the area, it's kind of, I don't know, it's an interesting spot, whereas Miami feels like a very unique situation. Tampa just feels like this is the Florida beach life, and it's just culmination of different areas, and it just so happens that Tampa's the center of it. At least kind of on the western side of in the Gulf there. That has nothing to do with the Buccaneers. It's just me ranting at this point. But, it is a really cool stadium. It's not, I wouldn't say it's historic by any means, but kind of getting to see the pirate ship, getting to see everything that's in there. It's definitely like, it's got some good vibes to it. You know what I mean? It's one of those that if I'm in Tampa and the football season's going on, I'm like, let me go check out some tickets. I'd like to go. I would say for me, I'm going to put this just a hair ahead of the Caesar Superdome in B tier.
I was actually going to put this at maybe the top of B tier.
Okay.
I like this stadium.
I'm not going to argue with that. Oh, man, I don't know if I can put it ahead of some of these. How about I put it in front of San Fran there?
That's fine. I mean, I like the pirate ship. It still hosts big games. It's also a World Cup hosting venue this year. I think it's pretty unique. It's pretty large, too, for when it was built. I mean, I don't have a lot to say about it. It is generic in some aspects, but it's also unique in some aspects. I'm not a big Florida guy. That's not generally where I go, so I don't really know a lot about Tampa. But I feel like for a fan base that seemingly could have the stereotype of being fair weather, they seem to show up and do pretty well. So I'm cool with this being in B tier.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's how I would describe it. Like, this feels like a fair weather area, but it's not, which is kind of unique. Like, they did a really good job. And the Buccaneers are an older franchise, so they've had decades and decades to kind of cement themselves in that community. All right, these next two I think will be pretty straightforward. Like I said, hey, old Nissan Stadium, it's not bad. It's just not good. And based on the circumstances we laid ahead of this, it's gone in the F tier. It needed something done. It either needed some grand renovations or just something new. And Tennessee said, you know what? Get it out. We're going to make this the focal point. Our main event center is going to be the new Nissan Stadium. And that's what they've done. The concepts, which I've fawned over many times and you've looked, it's very, very cool, very unique, definitely inspired by the Raiders. Definitely Tennessee background and culture. It's going to have all the bells and whistles. Nashville has been an ever-growing city in the past 2 decades. They got the money. They're going to put everything into it because this is not just a football stadium. This is the event center in Nashville. So that's the new one. I'm talking about the old one. You've already mentioned it. You compared it to kind of the Bengals stadium, and I think that's fair. It's probably it. And this is one of the things where unshamedly, I have not seen old Nissan Stadium. This is the last year I get to do it. I'm doing it. I don't know what game. I'm going to do it, though. But I'm just going to go in F tier because that's what we put onto it. Hey, you needed the something to happen, something to change. You're doing it, and I'm judging this based off of it needed to happen. Now, do I think it's as bad as maybe Soldier Field? No. Soldier Field is probably the worst field in the NFL. The only reason it's still standing is because political stuff and historical reasons. That's it. So I'm gonna leave it like that.
This is an easy F. You could make an argument that it could be at the end of C tier, but I think we have enough C tiers. I do think it's just slightly worse than Jacksonville and Cincinnati and all of those places. So when I went, my experience was it felt like worse Paycor Stadium or worse Paul Brown. And to me, if your worst version of a C-tier stadium, then what else is there to say? So it lacked personality. It felt like a generic stadium that the Titans happened to be leasing instead of the Titans stadium, if that makes sense. So F is fine with me, probably the top of F tier, but there's really not a lot to say. New stadium's coming. It'll be really cool, and it'll be the future of all events in Nashville. Everybody's really excited for that, but the current iteration of it needs to go quickly. I don't have any fond memories of it in person or watching it on TV.
Fair enough. I have no argument. And this one is an easy one. A layup on the last one. Northwest Stadium, home of the Washington Commanders, Redskins football team. Pick a different name in 5 years. Built in 1997, 65,000 capacity. I cannot echo. If there was a FF, F minus, a lower letter we had on the tier list, it'd be on there. Because as much as I just shit on Soldier Field, this is just disgusting. Does anybody else have a video of their franchise having the bleachers, the railings collapse and having fans almost fall onto opposing football players? No, I can't think of any. Does anybody have pictures or videos of pipes bursting in the stadium and God knows what is leaking out onto open areas? I can't think so. This is a stadium that needs so much. I can't even see renovation. Just plow it down at this point. Start anew. You've had so much bad history in the past 20 years between owners and name changes, and it's just what you used to be a figurehead for the NFL, and now you're the laughing stock. No matter what, with Jaden Daniels, whatever's going on the field, this is still the laughing stock. You have to do when I say a rebrand, don't change the name again, okay? Just, you got to get a new stadium up. You got to put a new bow on it with your new ownership. And I know they're in the process of it. I know they're trying to get stuff done, and it seems like nothing's getting done. But this is the bottom of F tier. F minus, Z, whatever.
This is F. This is dog shit. I mean, this is unredeemable dog shit. It's horrible. It's honestly a safety hazard. People's knees, quarterbacks' knees explode all the time on this horrendous playing surface. We watched Joe Burrow cut his rookie season short, getting his foot caught in the turf while getting sacked. We've seen other players, I believe Alex Smith, completely break his leg in half at this field. I mean, not only the Jalen Hurts railing saga, but people getting crap and sludge dumped on them from bursting pipes. They had a odious owner at one point in time. I mean, this, for a stadium that was built at this time, is totally out of date. It's also in Landover, Maryland, which is really far away from where a lot of the fans live. And I thought the Commanders were trying to get a stadium in D.C., and there was some kind of federal funding package that I'm unsure of the status of, but they were trying to do it at the site of the old RFK Stadium, which would be really cool, and I would love for them to be in D.C. That would be excellent. I've been to D.C., but Landover, Maryland, Redskins football team, Commanders, F. Horrible. It's decidedly below the three other stadiums in F tier. So that's all I have. I think with that, we have done it. We have done our first tier list, ranking all of the stadiums in the NFL. In the S tier, we have SoFi with the Chargers and the Rams. We got Jerry World after that, Mercedes-Benz for the Falcons. Then we have Allegiant for the Raiders, U.S. Bank Stadium for Minnesota, Lambeau, and then Lumen for Seattle. And then from there, I'll just read off the A tiers. We have the Colts in A tier at Lucas Oil Stadium, Arrowhead Stadium in A. We have State Farm Stadium, home of the Cardinals, in A. We have Lincoln Financial Field of the Eagles in A. Heinz Field, not Acrisure Stadium, in A, and then finally Ford Field for the Detroit Lions in A. So those are all the best stadiums in the NFL. The rest are debatable. We got a lot of just all right stadiums. Then there's a tier of like just mid-nothingness, and then we have a couple dog shit places. But it seems like all of the F-tier stadiums will be soon demolished in the next 5 to 6 years. So I think...
considering more than half of the league is B-tier or above in our list, that's pretty damn good.
The NFL
There's some really good stadiums.
The NFL is the cream of the crop. This is why I took the British people's stadium critique so personally, because it's like, you guys, look, man, you do a lot of things over there great. Stadiums, I'm not saying you don't do that great. We got that on lock, bro. Okay? We have it on lock. Don't even sit here and try to tell us about stadiums and how to put on big events, man. We have eclipsed you in that venue. So this list, I think, is pretty comprehensive, and I think you will find it's pretty representative of the broader public's opinion too. I think we're pretty objective on it. We didn't have too much variation. Generally, our variations were between the B and the C tier, or the A and the B tier, where at in that list. But that's really all I have on it, and I think this was a pretty good activity.
Yeah, this was fun. I liked it. We're definitely going to be using more of this. We're going to keep playing around with it, just the tier list, this, keep messing around with also some of the software that we have on our side and really allow us, and we've been saying it for weeks, and hey, look at this, we finally showed innovation. We're going to be making a better product just for everybody that's listening, because you've dedicated a lot of your time. We're 20 episodes in. We're basically, with all the time length, we definitely put in at least a 40-hour shift over this, if not more, with research, that's for sure. But this was fun. We're going to keep doing more stuff like this, and especially during the slower season. We're going to talk. I'm not the biggest baseball fan, but I know Kenton is, so if he wants to take a wheel on some baseball segments, by all means. I might just sit in the background like a seal or something. I don't know. I'll figure something out. I'll try to join the conversation. But, I could see us, we'll probably continue to talk just a little bit, maybe of the World Cup, just to see where the U.S. is standing. 2-0, baby. USA. Looks very good in our group. I'm excited to see what we do, even though I'm not the biggest soccer fan. I am a patriot. I'm an American. I'm going to root for my team, regardless if I despise the sport or not. But, yeah, as more topics come up, we'll play some different stuff. We've kind of joked around about doing, I feel like the president's one is probably a very realistic off-topic one. I'm looking forward to that one when we finally sit down and do it. That's definitely going to be some research time, but that might be, because we're both history nuts, that might be actually our most debated pod if we do that one.
Nixon, S tier.
I am not a crook. But no, thank you everybody for listening. Hope you really enjoyed this kind of new, it's not a new idea. It's a new idea for us in terms of the implementation for it. But like, subscribe, follow. We thank you for your time. We hope you enjoy this episode. Kenton, do you have any final last words for me or our audience?
Nope. Thanks for listening. Go Team USA 2-0 in the group stage, advancing to the knockout round, getting into the World Cup. Everything else, our stadium list is definitive. And with that, have a good weekend, everybody. Like, subscribe, share, and we will see you next week.
Peace, everybody.
Peace.